Welcome to the Sidebar, a book club for very late skeletons. I'm David.
I'm Gabe. When I'm not spanking, I'm spangling.
And I'm Capitalissimo, and I overthink everything. Today we are covering Tales of the Unreal, Volume 2, the long-awaited sequel to Tales of the Unreal from Unreal Press, a collection of weird tales and various other sort of short writings from a collection of pseudonymous authors
And ne'er-do-wells.
And doxers.
Demons and Doxers would be a great title.
Demons and Doxers, that'll be the retrospective that our friend of the pod, Miles McNaughton, writes about Unreal when it finally gives up the ghost.
I actually have my title idea, by the way, for the next Unreal sci-fi anthology, The Last of Sus.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm vetoing that. That's millennial cringe. Millennial. I'm sorry.
You're saying it's what is it? Neoliberal kitsch?
Yeah, it is peak neoliberal kitsch. That's Ryan Johnson made a joke like that, man. That's pure neoliberal kitsch.
It is a little. Making two overlapping pop culture references is definitely like the a Klein-esque sin.
We'll see. I might just do what I did with this one and never submit it to Miles on time.
Yeah, and for all those listening, recall that David was intending to get published in this and never submitted a story. So when we're extremely harsh to everyone who actually submitted anything and got it in there, just take that with as many salt licks as you like.
Yeah, it's all sour grapes. And actually, before we dive into the stories proper, should we give a little background on why we're covering Unreal Press? Because we've had a few new people find us who may not be familiar with Unreal Press.
Sure, yeah. Unreal
nepotism.
Unreal Press. So we met through the 4chan lit board, and through Unreal Press, which is a primarily 4chan born collaborative, I guess would be the right thing to call it. And so this is sort of respect to the roots. The first things that we covered, our first ever episode on Mixtape Hyperborea, also a 4chan project.
And there's kind of an interesting scene there too, because people that may have discovered us through Twitter probably aren't aware of the lit scene as it is, because it's really
very siloed.
Its own little
very siloed
world over there. It's so crazy siloed. There's little minor figures, little celebrities there that no one in the outside world would ever hear of. There's F. Gardner jumps to mind, Ogden Nesmer, who's in this book, and a few others. So, people, not that those two are at all similar.
Ogden Nesmer is an actual pig man.
Yes, it's an actual plane stealing pig man. But yeah, it's its own little world, and it has a very different culture too. Like the right-wing Twitter culture is, I don't know, it's a completely different beast. I'd say the lit culture is much more brutal towards one another.
Actively dangerous in some cases.
A lot more estrogen.
Yes, DMCAing one another, doxing one another.
Yeah, a very claws out sort of literary scene. Whereas it seems Twitter seems much more supportive, in good ways and bad ways, even, I would say. But yeah, we are paying respect to the ancestors, and we're going to cover. We're going to sing you the song of our people, and sometimes the song is really fucking off key and terrible.
Oh, and one more thing, I guess, before we jump in. The way we're formatting this one, as we've been starting to do this series, I think every episode we're learning how to do it a little better. This one is different because it's all short stories. So at least I find the way we talk through things is there's always like at least 10 minutes of discussion just about an author's style and this or that. And then there's a lot of this, once you know what a Wollston-esque lo-fi prose chapter reads like, you can infer a lot and just skim over this story or this story, this story, or this chapter of the same, mixtape Hyperborea, for example. Since these are each short stories, it's almost like a world unto itself. And so, Cap, you came up with I think, a solid system to try and keep us on track for this one. Each of us is going to try and take a first stab at one of these stories, give a quick plot overview, maybe read a quote, and then we'll try to discuss it. But just due to time constraints, because we have 17 stories total, I think we're going to keep it to, I say this now, 5 minutes ideally, maybe
don't put
10
that
minutes
on me.
per story.
Don't put that on. Don't put that on Gabe.
Yeah.
The poor boy could never.
Hey, listen, I'll only expand on the actual good ones.
Gabe's silence is violence. Oof.
Listen, you fucked up if I'm silent.
All right, the first one up is the cover story, the one that the cover is based on, in this wonderful artificially intelligent rendition.
Actually, I already have to do a sidebar comment to you guys. Can we talk about the book as product? Before we dive into the stories, because that's huge. This is something really cool that Unreal Press does as this sort of collaborative project is every product they make is free. It's on their Substack. It'll be linked below, along with the Substacks of the writers featured who have them and such. So one of the decisions I would say opening this up, many people not having heard of this, is do you buy it? Do you read the free copy? I would go ahead and say pick up the free copy. There are several stories in here that I think are just absolutely worth reading. Some that aren't quite as good. So there is some really good stuff in this, and it's free. I have some beefs with the formatting. Miles McNaughton's shaking his boots out there somewhere right now. The cover, it's pretty good. It's not quite as good as the
this
last
is way
one's
better.
Cover.
Don't deny. This one's way better than the last one, just because AI art has improved so much. The last one's cover was also AI, but it was like 2 weeks after that became available to the general public for free. So it was before anyone was tired of it even. But it looked like shit. It was terrible.
Now you can tell by the hand in the crotch.
It was the design elements. So not the art itself, but you can tell like there's no texturing on this one. On the last one, there was some really cool texturing on the spine of it and on the edge that the graphic designer Zapper, shout out, did on that, and also the shading at the top under the letters. Pro tip to anyone that ever puts out a book: if you want it to look like 25% more professional in 3 seconds, put a black semi-transparent like shadow behind it, like the lettering. Like all of a sudden things will look, they'll pop more, which this doesn't have, but the other one did. Anyway, that's super nitpicky. My main beef is there's like some fuck ups in the formatting, like these like weird symbols.
There are
in a few spots.
And poor and the last story in the book, Louise Lapin's mouths. Unfortunately, the title page of it has not been formatted correctly, and so instead of saying mouths, it says title, which is a big goof. Yeah, it's not great.
No, it leaves it more ambiguous. It's actually a proper accident. It's a good
accident. Everything that's wrong
more
was done intentionally, and it's an artistic choice. That's how we'll cope.
Listen, with how many amateur authors love to name drop the fucking titles, it's a blessing in disguise.
Good disrespect to the author. Spite for the author, Gabe.
Listen, I love Latinos. All right,
we know that.
Number one fan.
So I don't want to be overly harsh. I think it's a good product overall. But just in terms of if you're going to throw money down for it, I would say it has issues. I'm not sure if they're going to be fixed at this point. So that's why I would just suggest going with the free copy.
Also, the overall product is meant to look like a Weird Tales magazine from the early 20th century, sort of a very where Lovecraft would have originally been published in those types of like pulpy anthologies, and the typesetting on the front is evocative of that. the tag on the cover art, it being based on The Water Nymph by Palmer Adams, and then there being an ad on the back cover, and the ad is very is very humorously done. It's for Zulu Alitzpa's The Savage Green, which is a good novel on the magically real Florida. Which is a book I would recommend that you read.
It came together pretty well overall. So I'm sorry if I sound overly harsh. It's just it's just if you're spending real money on something, I think you deserve to be aware of that, those issues. But pick up the free copy absolutely and read. Yeah, just read ahead. You can listen to our cheat sheet here. But I think beyond this point are spoilers. So I guess take that course of action.
Evasive action.
Otherwise, we could just dive in with the Water Nymph.
All right. The Water Nymph, this starts off a little bit differently. There's a bit of a hard contrast between Tales of Unreal 1 and Tales of Unreal 2, other than the fact that the protagonist of the cover is not playing pocket pool with themselves in this one. The Water Nymph, it starts off as a very... There's a protagonist... It's very Lovecraft. It's very what ChatGPT would give you if you ask for a Lovecraft story. Right? Basically, it is a daughter looking for her father, who is basically a painter. He's camping out in the woods one day. He starts having visions of a lady in the lake.
It's a guy.
Isn't it?
It's definitely a guy.
No, is it a daughter? It had a very feminine.
Gabe,
voice.
You're lonely.
So a dude comes in. I guess he. Oh no! I guess you can say this is a story about a son getting his father's sloppy seconds in that case. Because, of course, it's revealed. It's very epitoral. I forgot what the term is when it's like
epistolary.
Epistolary, yes. That was right on my tip of my tongue. It's very epistolary.
I think it's just first person, retrospective. I think
it's not a series of letters written back and forth. It's in the form of a first person recounting of events. Presumably in a letter style format, but it's just one big thing.
Well, from the protagonist POV, because he's
it is sort of journals. Letter. I get what you mean. I think it's not truly epistolary, but it is formatted in that way. In letter.
But it's giving an ode to it.
Anyway,
it is. Yeah, it's journalistic. Yeah. So here's like the first opening line. Somewhere to some far remote region, my father, George Harper, had gone. He had been missing since last Tuesday, and ever since I heard the news of his disappearance, I, along with the rest of my siblings, have been restlessly searching for any clues that might bring us closer to explaining this shocking turn of events. And it keeps that tone throughout. Like I said, this is nowhere near as strong as the first story of Tales of Unreal 1, Traffic Stop, which was fantastic, by the author that appears later on in this volume, Zulu. Basically, it's just, to put it short, guy looks for his dad. Dad got clipped by the art hoe of the sea, the water nymph, the protagonist of the cover. He finds the nymph himself. He goes crazy, and that's basically it. I have actually not much to say. The prose is really nothing. There's no really character. There's no really evocative imagery, at least not for me.
Lord.
And that's basically
Go ahead, Cap. Sounds like you have some love for
yeah,
it.
no, I thought
it
was like, I thought it like really nailed the that sort of like mythos sort of way of speaking. For example, during the search for his father, he starts trying to find this lake in the woods. And the locals guide him a certain distance, but the land gets really weird, and eventually they just refuse to go any further. And, he starts saying, let's see, here's another quote. They were correct in that this land was different from the wilderness before it, for after I had crossed the bridge, I noticed a subtle shift in the surrounding scenery. The plants grew older and stranger, sporting Paleozoic patterns and long-forgotten colors. The oaks grew more twisted and closer together, oftentimes forming such an impenetrable walls that I had to walk a long distance just to continue on my path. And, like, so this is, like, that's the type of in investigation leading to madness that's extremely thematic for this type of project. Like, this is the type of story that that ought to be in Tales of the Unreal. Like, I think they really like nailed the voice and the theme. And yeah, it's like it's genre for sure, right? He finds the water nymph. She's this giant woman who's beautiful, but at some point the spell breaks and he realizes it's just this horrible water hag, runs away, goes back to civilization, but he's haunted by the voice of the nymph, and at the end of the story leaves to go sacrifice himself to this like obvious predatory malevolence. And like that's like 1,000% nailing the theme, right? So
Yeah.
so like
Lovecraft.
it is a heavy riff on Lovecraft. I wouldn't, no points for like having a completely original voice or anything, but you're definitely doing the assignment. So
Yeah, but Lovecraft has better prose.
He does good. Some of his diction, like he like rambles about Paleozoic, whatever, ancient shit, and some of that. I did struggle. I would say, yeah, the prose was a little too simple. My main note was my favorite $5 word, specificity. There was a ton of things about her song, the melody, her song. There was, and the two escorts that the man had. They're really not described beyond that they're men. Like, it's like, are these like gruff fishermen? Are these like mountain folk? Like, where is Arkhamville? Like, what is this? Is this like, at first I wasn't sure if they were like in India or something. I missed that they were in Arkhamville. I was like, is this like overseas? Like, where is this? Like, there's not a ton of that really juicy specificity in terms of, saying that her song sounded like silver chimes, or, this kind of bugle, or, like a real something you can wrap your hands around. It was a little bit generic in a lot of the language, I guess, was my issue.
Yeah, that's why I said it's like basically ChatGPT, right? Because like there's a lot of flavor in Lovecraft, right? People meme, like the hyper meme of Lovecraft is, oh, undescribable horror, right? But if you read something like, I don't know, Music of Eric Zane, right, or even Shadows over Innsmouth, he's actually quite detail oriented, everything around the undescribable thing. The music, for example, how he describes the Eric Zane playing his not
it's
harp,
a stringed instrument,
cello.
whichever. Yeah.
Is it violin or cello?
That is my favorite. Yeah,
he describes the playing, the creaking, the move.
By the way,
yes, it's fantastic. There's no tentacles in it. It's that's my standard of Lovecraft, and this just feels like a guy who plays the video games of Lovecraft or something like this, and the meme of Lovecraft without actually experiencing Lovecraft.
If you had like another edit pass or so with like I think the kind of feedback we're giving, I think it could have been stronger. But I would say that, yeah, plot wise, it really hit the nail on the head, and overall it was competent. Like, it was in no way failing. My critique is more like, polish, I guess, was my mine. But all right, we're at 30 minutes, still on the first story. How are we feeling, boys?
Feeling great. Brutal. All right, well, so the next one is Vanta Black by Alex Bayman. Vanta Black is the story about a young gentleman who is in what's basically like he's in a hyperbaric chamber. He's been hermetically sealed from the outside world like so that they can run some medical tests on him. And shortly after he enters the chamber, the atmosphere of the Earth blows off, and the planet is exposed to the void. So everything around him, he witnesses the apocalypse through this little porthole in his chamber, and sees all the windows blow out of the hospital that he's in. Sees people who were walking outside collapse and by being explosively decompressed, I guess. And it's sort of him coming to grips with this. He's on borrowed time anyways, because the chamber's not meant to be is not a countermeasure for the atmosphere of the Earth being blown off, but it does give him some time to think about his situation. So our unfortunate survivor is contemplating his lot, and he's running out of water, running out of food rapidly, and eventually he decides to just die on his own terms, and he opens the door and goes out onto the lawn and gets cooked by the full light of the sun as he decompresses. So.
Well, don't forget, he also gets cooked to that sexy nurse babe next to him.
Yeah. And a nurse who he failed to let into the chamber, who died against the door. He has a entirely one-sided kinship with her.
That and the clown.
Actually,
the clown imagery
I
loved. Coming to entrance to the hospital.
So yeah, he does mention that.
I was gonna say that too.
Someone had said that a clown would be coming to the hospital, and he muses that the clown must look ridiculous. He says, let's see, here's the quote. The sort of clown that comes to cheer up terminally ill children. She mentioned something about a large order of balloons for him to hand out. Despite myself, I laughed as I imagined all of the balloons bursting at once when it happened, then falling limply to the floor all around his body like a bouquet of wilted flowers. And I did laugh aloud at that image.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and
really
as he exits the hospital in his dying thoughts, he does see the clown collapsed outside, just outside the entryway, and he's one of his dying thoughts was, well, that is funny.
I love the great feeling of desperation, the sort of doomed feel. Like this definitely, the mood of it got into me. It was really well done.
It's very polished. You really feel the work with this one.
Yeah, except there was some fuck ups right at the finish line in terms of tenses. It's past tense for the entire thing. It switches to present back and forth a little bit at the end. It's just an editing thing. Did not ruin the story in the least, but just something to keep an eye out for. Which actually could have made sense. You could have transitioned to present and stayed in present, but it wishy-washed, or went back and forth rather. No, otherwise, yeah, I just love this one.
I thought this one, I mean, for packing in such a specific and creative premise and executing the full mental life of this character in 7 pages, very good. Yeah, I like this one a lot.
Yeah,
it's extremely polished. Yeah, this is one of the. This should have been this. I treat this as the first legit real story.
Yeah, well, what would the cover have been?
Just the nurse,
just a void,
or the clown. Oh my god, the clown! Be
no, the clown. The clown. Yeah.
Oh god, that would. Yeah,
because this is like a second story of the clown in it. Yeah.
If you want the cover story, you got to have some imagery. You got to have some imagery if you want the cover story.
To be a woman.
How are they going to generate the prompt?
Loves making women. I say this as someone that has to use it for my blog, and it just tries to convert. You can type in, carrot. You can type in
for the blog,
horse,
honey. I swear.
And then, it just turns into this giant big-titted anime chick. That's the default because that's what all the Coomers, I guess, are doing on there all day.
It's just remembering your default.
AI God knows the truth.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Waifu is laifu. That's what the AI God knows.
See, this is why Japanese worship technology. That makes so much sense now.
Nick Land. Nick Land is coming around to it, and he's gonna say, you know what, the AI gods are women. That's what we're going to determine through all of this.
God really is a woman. The e-hoes are right. but no, for real, back to this story. I actually do want to talk about this story. This story actually encapsulates both the successes of this novel, of this particular collection, and the flaws of both amateur writings of Volume 1 and Volume 2. If you notice with a lot of these stories, they come up with a funny concept. Maybe, for example, dangerous plants, and then they do nothing with it. They have a napkin idea, oh my god, this is such a cool idea. And they basically do nothing with it.
We should probably just cover that one when we cover that one.
Yeah. That's what I'm. Yeah, keep it vague. But this one, from the title is perfect. The opening line is extremely good.
The title's
The line is
copyrighted,
this.
by the way.
Of course, as it should be. There's a few silver linings in all this. I think the original had something to do with clouds. That part's no longer applicable, of course, right? Because it's a world with no sky. And like there's something really beautiful about this, the imagery. And like you said, he gets to horror, he gets everything about the concept he can. He just milks it perfectly.
Affecting.
There's another great quote about this, right? This sky metaphor. Here's the other quote. No holy book predicted this, that I know of. There was nothing in the way of a warning. No alien invasion, no speech from the president, or commandments from the sky to build an ark. One moment, the sky was there, then it just wasn't. Like, this kind of mood, this kind of peace, everything about it just kind of gels together. Like the theme of just a skyless universe. You feel it. And, the everything from, again, the clowns, he does horror, he does humor, he does an odd wonder to it. Like, there's a certain majesty to it, kind of, because it even ends with him kind of saying, you know what, this is kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Other than a single, like there's just empty blackness, a complete void. But there's an odd beauty to the void. You know what I mean? He looks, it's not just pure horror or pure, oh my God. It's like Total Recall, where his eyes pop out. It's supposed to be like a gimmick or a shtick. It's not a shtick in this. This man goes through several emotions basically at once for seeing something so actually properly Lovecraftian. Like, Lovecraft would have a dream about this, like during his like schizo night visions. What do they call it? Sleep paralysis? Like, this is a sleep paralysis moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is actually, oddly enough, more neo-Lovecraftian. And much more of a neo-Lovecraftian idea of the actual archetype of his beliefs and of his kind of his shtick or chic than the first story.
It's more scientific or whatever, but materialistic, but it's like the world exposed to the void. And it's inexplicable.
Yeah, completely out of control. No possible solution to this problem.
Mm-hmm. Because that's how Lovecraft went crazy. Was actually he tried to be an astrologist, but then he thought of the concept of space, and it mind broke him.
Anything else in that one, or just keep cruising?
Just as a final point. Overall, one of the best stories here in terms of execution. Great opening line. Everything, it just kind of comes together perfectly. Very well done, Mr.
Really
Alex.
strong.
Very well done.
Moving on to the next one. Sleep of the Diviner by Sophus. And let me just open with the reading, because I think this first opening paragraph captures it pretty well. O anoxia, that mindless, dreamless sleep, to stagger along a road, fumes of what you were, to look down at faded map melting in midnight rain without a clue as to what is happening. Heavy, humid breaths all the way up another hill. Empty air pooling in lung bottoms the whole way down. Asphalt slick with rain, sodden shoes fail to gain traction. Really, where was it that you were meant to be? The rippling haze of gray pines holds no answers, merely fencing the road. The sun is long set. It is getting cold. So, Sleep of the Diviner is a sort of fever dream, second-person nightmare of this person wandering. They don't even know, I think, where they are, but they're like trying to cross a state. They have this like tattered map. They're like their mind is going. The world is sort of vacillating between maybe reality and maybe this nightmare world where he thinks he's being followed by a man. The man approaches, then I think he vanishes. He's trying to seek. You're trying to seek your mother. You see, enter a gas station. There's this giant bird baby being eaten by ants behind the counter, and then he reapproaches, and it's actually a young woman. And then he leaves, and the man and the woman from the gas station are both chasing him, basically hold him down, and then they force him to eat their fingers. And the eating of fingers, the vomit flavor are kind of these consistent themes throughout it. Plot-wise, it's pretty thin. That's not really what it's about, but it's very well written. Yeah, just a fever dream of just disgust and a nightmare. So it really fits the theme in my opinion of weird. It did leave me. I felt like I was supposed to get something from it, And when I first finished, I was just like what was the end? Like, was I supposed to understand? Is that a metaphor? Is that Jesus? Is that something? I don't know. Maybe it is. Sophus is an esoteric dude, maybe, but it was one of my favorites reading. I read it twice just for fun.
I'm not sure if I got filtered on this one.
Brainlets.
Me too. The prose is a lot better than the next story that does, because this story and the next story are kind of very haiku-esque, like stream of consciousness. This one does it a lot better because it's a lot more evocative, right? The story after this is pure like pseudo exposition, like just telling you facts than anything else. This one, you actually get a feel, right? You feel the rain crumpling the map in his hand, the bridge. I thought at first, like, oh, is this like a werewolf story? Because, oh, is this passing out? You know, but overall, it just doesn't. It reminds me of a jar, from the first one, a little bit, in terms of like it's more experimental. He's trying to do something, but doesn't. There's no bow. It's an open circuit. It's not a closed circuit. You know what I mean? The energy's flowing, but it just kind of evaporates into the air. I mean, it's a nice steamy air. It's got flavor to it. It's a smoky feel. The ending paragraph, right, describes...
Delicious, flavorful
Yes,
air.
the blood pooling in his mouth as he eats the fingers. It's actually quite good. I liked it quite a bit. It's very evocative. It punches you, really. That's the most, like, descriptive prose in the piece, actually. You know, and they're screaming, like, have me. Like, you know what I mean? It finally gets the blood pumping a little bit. Other than that, yeah, I got filtered, too. There's some very good prose. I like his... imagery here. Imagery's a lot better than again the first story. First story's ass. But this one actually does have a very evocative feel to it. And I guess the idea of lacking of oxygen is your mind's like blanking out and spacing out. It doesn't outright tell you other than the first phrase. So, and also the diviner, maybe that's something to do with actually like visions. I don't know.
I mean,
but
I think that my overall thought of this one, a diviner is attempting to find a truth that is a remote truth, right? Or something that is a hidden future event. The references to anoxia and being strangled, it kind of makes me feel like this story is like the last thoughts before a death or something like that. Like someone's brain is literally shutting down, and so they're reshuffling the thoughts that they had in this, like in the immediately preceding it, or perhaps, you know, a mixture of merely symbolic things. That's where I, you know, if I'm trying to attempt to suss out a narrative, it would be my explanation, both from the initial paragraph and the last, you know, the first line and the last line really
are the strongest.
Yeah, well, it's just, you know, to stagger along a road, fumes of what you were, look down at a faded map melting in midnight rain without a clue as to what's happening, and then the last line is, and his clammy fingers close around your throat. The bridge rushes towards you, but never quite meets the rush of an infinite gap before blackness. So, like, if you were to say, it's like the inability to experience your own death or something like that. So there's just these, like, the brain throwing out perception, but it's unable to perceive the end of it. I mean, you know, maybe that's a stretch, right?
It could be. I just gave up on trying to construct like a solid plot. I was thinking it was either that or
you just enjoyed the ride on
or
it.
just treating it as a fever dream. Like I was like, it might just be like a madman's nightmare kind of scenario or something. I guess I wasn't trying to rationalize it beyond that. After my initial confusion, I gave up. Okay, anything else on that one, or keep chugging?
I want to give something to the authors. I feel like a dick if I don't, you know, give something good. Very good, evocative feelings, heighten more on the connective tissue. The end has a punch, but you can put a lot more weight behind that punch, evocatively, in terms of imagery or mood, you know, if you want to do a pure mood piece, you have to crank up the tension, you have to crank up the feeling, the energy, the adrenaline.
I felt the
to it.
adrenaline for my
So
part.
I'd say just try to close that circuit I talked
I
about
was
earlier.
I guess for me, I felt the tension from his like the confusion and all that. But all right, hitting the stamp. Next, bring it up on the conveyor belt. We have, what is it? Before They Fall from Gabe.
This one, I think this is a Millennium Tier. If I recall correctly, this is the Millennium Tier story because I think it's about 9/11.
It's a meteor crashing into Earth.
Yeah.
Is it a meteor?
It's definitely not.
No, because he talks.
9/11.
No, because I remember correctly the ending, right? Because it's his pure stream of consciousness, right? You're thinking from his pure head, right? He's an alcoholic. He quit for 2 years. You know, my bitch Madeline, she's with mother 100 miles away. You know, he's having visions of like Valkyries, Revelations, Antichrist, and it's purely stream of consciousness. And it basically tries to do what the last story did, but way less evocatively, because it just feels like a giant ass.
Yeah, my only note on this is more like before I hit the enter key. Thank you.
Nice.
That's all I have.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I got nothing for this, really.
It is one paragraph. Like, yeah, I mean, it's definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's either nukes or a meteor or something like that. So, yeah, it's a drunk man walking through the streets of a city as he just like witnesses people either doing violence or doing sex or just dealing with dealing with their imminent and unavoidable demise in whatever way they feel is best. And it's really a lot more like cynical and black-pilled than say Vanta Black. And it's not close, like by a lot. It is it's just darker and crueler than Vanta Black by a lot.
It gives some really good examples and imagery.
Vanta Black was
I don't want to be totally negative. It had some interesting stuff. It didn't. The main, the protagonist. It's a flash fiction basically. This is like 3 pages or so.
It is.
I think it does with the space it has. It creates this sense of utter panic and this guy just being, out of his gourd, drunk and freak out. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't really have. I don't know what it's missing. It doesn't really have. I guess I would put it on par with the Water Nymph, where it's competent. Like it's not. I wasn't suffering reading it in the least. Like I wasn't bored or miserable. But I guess it was just so. It was so much so fast. Like a lot of it was just a newsreel of what's going on around the world. Right.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's but if you were to film this, it would be 30 seconds of smash cuts. Right.
It was shaky cam.
Newscast B-roll. But yeah, I mean, I didn't hate this one. It was not one of my favorites. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked this one. I would have liked this one a lot more if I hadn't read Vanta Black like 20 pages before it. So yeah.
Vanta Black sets up expectations. Yeah. Like a lot of, I also have to say, like the editing of this, I would totally rearrange the stories completely. Well, the first one was organized a lot more cleanly. Like basically the best stories are bookends. Literally the first stories that were great, the end story is great. Here, basically the end story is great. The first one is meh. And because Vanta Black should have obviously been the first story.
Actually, I think it's pretty similar format. Like I think there's a 50-page rough patch in the middle. And I would say everything in the last third.
Yeah, it's called saccharine.
Everything in the first and last third is like either competent or quite good or really good. Like I wouldn't say anything we've covered so far I hated. Like I thought in this short one we just did, it was competent. It was a little newsreely. It was a little.
It was fine. It was a C. It was a C.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
hit the button.
So the next one we've got is Muriel's Intruder by K.R. Hartley. Okay, so it starts with okay, I'm gonna read the first paragraph. Low clouds reared over the country and spilled like pitch onto the prairie, slow and wet and green at the edges. They wafted hither, the black fires approaching, and rained across the gloam in small flickering sheets of light, fireflies like dragons in the reach. The sky blinked and faded and fell to the wind, and the rinse came through in sharp sweeping parries that bent the horizon homeward and called the air into long bands of water. It's the longest way to say it was a dark and stormy night. I did enjoy it, though I don't necessarily agree with the. I think some of the imagery does not really jive with the rest of the story. The way that this works is, or the way that this story goes is, there is a couple enjoying their dark and stormy night, having a lot of apparently fucking incredible sex,
shagging on the rug.
Yeah, asking for pregnancy and sharing cigarettes, the best kind. Yeah, I wish that were me. So,
and don't they paint with menstrual blood?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah,
they want to paint the wall with menstrual blood.
The woman mentions that she wants to paint the ceiling an incredibly dark red, and she wants it to be like menstrual blood, but not. She does not suggest that they paint it in menstrual blood. She's passionate, not a complete freak.
It's a very fertile aesthetic.
And she's my wife. Anyway, so there's a knock at the door. This creepy looking guy has some completely cockamamie story, and the woman is like, "Do not let that man in. Get him the fuck out of the house. He's gonna murder us." Man's like, "Dude, you just gotta fucking go. You can't use my goddamn phone." So sends him down the road. Woman's like, "Where did you send that guy?" Like, down the road. Well, call the neighbor so that, Muriel doesn't get murdered, Muriel being their 80-year-old neighbor. They get the phone call.
Oh, I thought she was the one that got knocked up.
How is your reading comprehension,
You're as bad
Dave?
as me at Millennium.
I know, I barely remember.
You are fucking terrible.
I barely remember the story. I barely remember
Well,
the
then
story.
maybe don't interrupt the guy who knows what happens.
I'm trying to guess the ending.
Well, okay. All right. So, Muriel gets the phone call, springs into action, goes and gets a shotgun, and proceeds to go to a different part of the house and load the shotgun while this guy has appeared at the house and is knocking frantically, demanding to be let in, and. Eventually, once she's fully armed, the guy starts to break in, and it is a full Die Hard sequence with her trying to fend off this home invader and shooting him multiple times. Like, this guy eats so many shotgun blasts, it is unbelievable. After an intense action sequence that features her. Jumping out the window of the second story and getting into a car and ramming this guy and her car through the wall of her own house, and not reloading this shotgun for a good 16 shots, so she's carrying a Saiga with an extended mag or something insane. The police eventually, arrive, and she sort of rolls over into the grass and looks up at the storming sky, in a full 1980s action sequence, basically.
Yeah, this one was had heavy slasher DNA to me. Like, it felt like Chainsaw Massacre, or I don't know, just something that kind of. Energy.
Yeah, except she was fighting back the entire time and armed. Yeah. So
what's the Bruce Willis one? The Christmas Tower. It's Die Hard.
Die Hard, the one that I said at the beginning.
We're just cluttering up your read of this.
Listen, I think my ending was more entertaining, to be honest.
True.
Anyway, so the after Muriel rolls onto her back, you do hear from the neighbors again. and they saw the police sirens, and they're like, "Do you think she's okay? I hope she's okay." And she mentions that she wants to name the baby Adam if it's a boy, and if it's a girl, and then it says she smiled and inched herself downward, filling her body and closing her eyes. So
that part I remember.
Yes. So this was a lot of fun. It was not a story that I think necessarily should have been included in Tales of the Unreal Volume 2.
Wasn't weird enough.
Like, it was not a weird tale. It was an action movie. Like, that's it. Like, it was an action story. So like, if this was like, one of those like if this was supposed to be like a men's adventure magazine or something like that, or like a true crime magazine, or I mean, not a true crime, but a crime magazine, then that would have been on theme. But I don't know. Weird Tales. This ain't it. That said,
the only thing weird about this tale is its inclusion.
But
yeah, it's true. That said, Muriel is a cool diehard granny, and I look forward to Muriel's Intruder 2, where it happens when she's getting on an airplane to go see her grandkids, and she has to fight off a team of terrorists. So
there was the framing with a couple. To me, that was the weird part. Like, but it wasn't Lovecraftian. It was just kind of, I don't know. It was just weird. It was literally weird. Like they were.
It didn't make any sense. Yeah. I was trying to think. Is there an intruder? Like, are we doing some sort of like weird thing with sexual penetration and home invasion? Because like maybe there's like a kind of like fucked up but cool multi-level theme there, if that was the intent.
Oh, so it is a rape.
No, Gabe. God.
Read the fucking
like an home invasion?
Did you do the reading?
Yes.
Gabe?
No, because you're saying the metaphor, right? So home
like
invasion,
right?
right?
Vagina. I don't think he's saying it has to be rape.
Yeah. I'm not, it was definitely not. But no, I'm just saying, is there sort of like a, passionate, completely consensual sex can be slightly violent in its appearances, but I just don't think that there's. I don't think it's there. I don't think the story has that layer.
No, well, I do have a line of inquiry, real quick, sincerely.
Yeah.
Did the guy have a face? Because I remember the opening dialogue, the lady was like, "Oh my God, his face."
He had like a scarred face or something.
Oh, that's it? Just a scarred face?
The woman recognized him. Like, the guy was standoffish, but the woman recognized him as dangerous.
Oh,
the woman immediately recognized him as being hostile. Like, she saw right through any sort of pretense. So,
was there any supernatural element?
I doubt it. Or certainly nothing that had any sort of tangible or intelligible payoff.
That was my issue. If like the two stories were too disconnected.
The dude wasn't a monster. Like, he had a fucking kitchen.
Was he black?
Based. That's how he took all those shots. He kept coming. He was dusted out.
He was Yeah, it was all the like speedball of like meth and fentanyl. Eventually it wasn't even the bullets. He just couldn't breathe.
Yeah, black clearly don't crack.
Yeah. I have to report this. I have to post about this on Lit endlessly about
never getting
monetized on YouTube. Anyway,
okay, but I would say it was well written. Like I had my issue was that it was more like the two stories felt a little disconnected, and yeah, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was weird. That's a bit of a theme though. I would say like a third of these stories were not weird. Like there's a lot of just post-apocalyptic. Even Vantage Black falls a little bit into that, even though I give it a pass for the reasons we discussed. But Before They Fall is just post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, Vanta Black is like definitely like sort of a an older style of, you know, it's a little more of like a Rod Serling, like Twilight Zone kind of scenario, right? Than like, say, something that's
which totally
strictly
counts.
Lovecraftian. But I mean, I would definitely, I would say it totally
I don't want
counts.
to be overly like, oh,
exactly.
Weird Tales is Lovecraft. Oh, it's got to be Lovecraft. Like, that's not at all the case. Like, there should be fantasy. There should be, there should be the more, Rod Sterling-esque, just like wild shit. Like, everyone's gone.
Pussy portals.
Oh my God. Oh, Tales 3. I got my concept already.
It's like mouths.
It's called holes.
Anyway, we'll get to that one.
Is that name taken yet?
All right.
Moving on to Colder Than Ice by L.A. Labouchaine. Okay, so the plot of this one, our heroine, Revere, is breaking into an abandoned gas station on the run from what she calls spiky people, sort of some Fallout-esque raiders that she stole some food from. She's debating what to do. It's written in third limited. And basically it's just sort of like a combat sequence of they follow her to the gas station. She hides behind some shelves. I think she shoots one of them with her crossbow, or she has a spear, and then she makes a run for it, and they are shooting at her with a crossbow.
She has a spear and a gun, and one of them has a crossbow and one of them has an axe.
There's 3 of them, and she's just by herself. And there's this previous whole sequence that's referenced back of the theft. There's also some references to it being in hell, which I was not 100% clear. Like, is this literally in hell, or is this like a post-apocalyptic world that she interprets as hell?
I thought about this a little bit, and I think that it's just being interpreted as hell because everyone who's there apparently just woke up there. So they got isekai'd into this
Fallout.
the world of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and some of them just adopted the like Mad Max Fallout Raider type of look. That those are the spiky people, right? But they don't. He doesn't really go into the whole like the scenario that caused her to arrive in this world. She said that like she was just there one day.
So I've read LA before, and the thing about LA, I want to like LA. All right, I do. I really do. He is very imaginative. He likes the subtle twist. He's like very low fantasy kind of author. I've read previous stuff where he managed to blend the isekai-esque scenario with a blend of like subtle realism. He's much more very action oriented, right? He loves his action scenes, but he always sprinkles in like lore drops where you can pick up on it and actually kind of run the line before he reveals it to you. Here, I just didn't get much of that. It really just felt like, I have an action scene scenario, isekai a bitch in there, and basically that's it.
I had 3, I guess, issues with it. The first was the action scene blow by blow, which my Lord and Savior, Brandon Sanderson, has lectures about, just in fiction, in literature, in writing. He actually gives good advice on this one.
Coal post.
In writing, action scenes just often don't translate well, and so if the majority of the scene is just leaning behind this or leaning behind that, waiting to strike here, waiting to strike there, it can get a little bit slower feeling. And then there's this the other 2 are, we get this like, there's so much references to before the this encounter at the gas station. It's like, why didn't the story just start there? Like, if we keep referring back to this encounter so much, like, why didn't we just, let's just experience it and then experience the gas station. And then the last one was more of a, I guess, a phrasing challenge, just a lack of consistent or direct naming. There's a lot of references to, what the chainsaw face guy, the guy with a face like whipped, like it's been whipped by a weed whacker. The woman also gets like 3 descriptions, and Revere herself is also described descriptively rather than just with her name very often. And so, that just added to a little bit of a sense of confusion where the story was so much about where 4 people are in relation to each other. Their names for each other not being always being consistent because we don't even know the names of these three people, and they're described slightly differently between each one. And the story is just built on this blow by blow. So yeah, it just created, it just didn't make it, it just did not flow because of those three sort of compounding issues. Plot wise, completely written, it was fine. Thematically, not really weird. So yeah, to me it's kind of a meh.
Yeah. I mean, it was whatever. It was another, it was another action sequence, right?
Actually, in terms of ordering, I think, Gabe, you had mentioned about your dream of reordering it. Yeah, this and Muriel's Intruder should be on opposite ends just because content-wise, they're both combat.
Being right after each other, Jesus Christ.
That probably added to my issue with this one because Muriel's Intruder was fun, but it was very, combat-intensive logistics of, where you are in the room relative to this as well. And then it's here's another one, but with even, more characters on my Fallout Tactics map of...
I did think that Muriel's Intruder had better action. And I thought that Colder Than Ice had more... I thought that the, internal monologue of Revere was kind of interesting. I haven't L.A. Labuschagne, the author of Colder Than Ice, has a couple novels that I have not read, but I do own. So I will get to those eventually. But this, especially Colder Than Ice, really feels like something that is a chapter in a novel.
I'm pretty positive it is, actually.
It's you just pick some random.
99.9% sure it is. Yeah.
You just grab 9 pages out of the middle of a book, and it's I guess this is what a short story is.
All right, good enough. LA,
anyway.
You may live another day. Pushing the button. Brr. Next.
All right, now it's for my double dealer, Ruby A. Dagger and Saccharin. Right, we're finally back onto the Kino short stories. All right, so Ruby Dagger is basically it's Elric's Sword. If everyone knows Elric of Ribbonnet, it's basically it's about a thief who gets a dagger. He basically falls in love with this dagger. If he's a calling to him, right? The dagger calls to him like Stormbringer. I think that's the name of Elric's Sword.
I do not know what Elric
of Melniborn.
Eric of Elba-Minine.
Oh, you mean Michael Moorcock?
Yeah, Moorcock.
Elric of Melniborn. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
of Albacore. Anyways, yeah,
of elbow porn.
Elbow porn. Yes, of Melbourne.
Lewis.
It's just. G'day. Yeah, nah. I'll be having that. I'll be having that sword. I'm not a thief. I'm an absconder. Anyway, sorry.
No, honestly, this was more entertaining than the actual story. This is another ChatGPT kind of fantasy story. Around the mill. I'm sorry. It is. What's the theme of this?
Ruby Dagger? Oh, what's the it's a guy gets a cursed man. Okay.
That's not a theme. That's a plot synopsis.
Okay, so guy gets a okay, all right. Yeah, guy gets a cursed dagger, has to start giving it blood, and it demands ever greater sacrifices. And he gets he gets a little shop of horrors, like if you give a mouse a cookie, slippery sloped into sacrificing
a barmaid,
into sacrificing a bunch of people. Yeah.
Oh, I remember this side quest in Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a short one. It's like 2 pages. I liked it. It was not. I think it has issues, but it's short and sweet. It has a little bit of that. I'm desperate for any Clark Ashton Smith fantasy weird, and this is the closest we get in this one, which is not written in.
Yes,
which mine was, by the way, if I'd submitted. Next time, stay tuned for next time. It's a direct pastiche, but this is the closest we get. It is, yeah, so first he like breaks into a noble's house, finds it on the skeleton, and then, just we follow it. My main issue was the sequence of events wasn't super clear in terms of like it's not clear that he's in the hotel. Like that felt a little bit. I don't know how to phrase this. Like, it wasn't structurally clear, like where he was as the story happened, which could be intentional as like a reveal. But to me, it kind of took away from it, where it was like we got caught up on all the stuff that already happened in the past tense, and then I don't know, and then all of a sudden it's like he's about to kill someone. It didn't build it up in the time, just the way the sense of time worked in it. I gave a long response to this guy in a thread already, so that was me, by the way. If you read that, dude, I was more eloquent there. Sorry.
I mean, I think that this one was.
There's a redhead.
I mean, I think that
that's nice.
Wrong race. I think that this one was. I sort of interpreted it as kind of like a Stoker-esque kind of setting. Like I imagined it as like high Gothic, sort of like dreary. Eastern European sort of setting. I thought it was thematically on point. I thought it was I thought it was right for the book. And like I felt like it was fairly competently written. I agree that like the narrator's location was it was the course of events was nebulous in the telling, right? And his location was nebulous, and I feel like that could have been nailed down a little better. And I mean, maybe even by just reordering a few paragraphs. But overall, like, this is 2 pages long, and I think that there are a lot of like concepts, and it's like a very fast way to narrate that fall. So, I liked this one, actually. I think more than either of you did. For sure.
I did like it. Yes, I always leave my criticism, but I like the writing style. Besides the time clarity thing, I was like struggling to put into words, and it's so short. I guess this kind of also goes into one of my complaints with like lit projects in general. Is there such a lack of editing and feedback, not on the writer side for anyone in this book. I'm not criticizing anyone there, but in terms of like the editor of a publication, like I get no one's getting paid for this, but there's so much. I don't know, having been in some of this stuff, it's just what you send is put in it. I just think something like this, if someone had given that feedback or some of these other ones, it could have added a layer of polish. And there's this culture of rushing.
You're getting dangerously close to volunteering us to do that shit, and I will not.
Yeah,
we're doing it for the community.
Yeah. I'll only do it after you've put yourself out there.
I'm already stretched too thin, but everyone else I'm sure has like a ton of free time. They can do this shit, so it's up to them. But anyway, just say it's a concern I have with like the community of there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of like hurry up and like rush it out once you have it and then figure it out later. Like with this one, why did Tales of the Unreal Volume 2 why did it not come out in October? Like why did it come out in September? Like why not take a few weeks to have back and forth with writers? I don't know, this is far afield from the story, but just a general thought I have.
Well, but David, why did this podcast not come out in October when it would have been seasonally appropriate?
Listen, it's a surprise. It's the trick in Trick or Treat. We tricked them. They expected a Halloween episode. We gave them a Christmas episode.
Surprise! Halloween, the first week of November.
The true answer: Gabe was on vacation. I probably could have gotten this out for Halloween if Gabe had been present and accountable last week.
Hey, blame my in-laws.
But anyway,
all right.
Let's move on to Gabe. You have your favorite for us next, Saccharin.
My sweet joy. Saccharin by Amusa. Now, this story has been controversial. I won't even tell you all the sauce. Amosai, yes. I won't tell me all the Amosai sauce on this story. This has been controversial. The editor has gotten death threats for including the story inside this compilation.
Yeah, but you wrote those.
Right, this is... Listen, it was a marketing stunt, all right? It was a multi-layered scheme for marketing, all right? The point being is, this story is deeply controversial among certain people. The reason why is because it's written by an absolute illiterate. The story, from what I can gather, right? It's like it's interpretational. It's like the concept of motivated reasoning. Once you spend 3 times trying to read this and pretending it doesn't suck after you put so much effort into it, you just kind of like hyperstitionally create something out of thin air. I think that's the greatest thing about this story, right? So let me just give you a slight, vague plot synopsis of whatever plot there is. So it takes place in the weeb Mecca, Japan, and the protagonist is a monk. And from what I can gather, based on the prose, the gimmick for this one, unlike the stream of consciousness of before or like third person, basically it's supposed to sound like shit. And when I say it's supposed to sound like shit, the author, in pure copium, right, of an absolute narc, would say, dude, it's supposed to sound like it's translated, man. It's like it's translated from English to Japanese and back to English again, man. Which is to say he didn't want to bother actually editing the damn thing. So, what we can gather from this deeply schizophrenically... Listen, one of these motherfuckers DNF'd it the first time, all right?
I DNF'd it too.
Pounded through
We
this.
both did.
I fucking wrote notes. Yeah. Wait, what?
I said I would, and I tried again, and I DNF'd it again.
I did go back. I did go back. Yeah. And I regret it. I have nothing but regrets.
You chose this for me.
No, I obviously I hadn't read it when I assigned the stories for the synopses. Although you are the one most deserving of this, so that was clearly hand of God.
I'm the one most deserving of this.
Yes.
I could have gotten sub. I could have done like fucking Run of the Protestants.
Never a single time in your life, Spencer, will you get a sub.
Nutcracker Bros.
My thing with this one is I think it does execute the accent like in a way, but it's one of those things where like, you know, do I want to read someone do a rendition of someone singing Happy Birthday in farts, like someone farting out the Happy Birthday song in text form? Like how long until that gets boring? And I think you have like 1 page of content that you can get through before it's like, wow, this is like exhausting, like how unclear. And just for me, what pissed me off, like there was a lot of repetitive language, like literally the same phrase twice. And I'm like, this is just like not respectful of my time. Like I get that you're going for a vibe here, but I'm not going to like suffer through this when it's not clear. And then when it's repetitive.
Oh, can I read some for you?
Yes, please.
For the audience.
Oh, dude, this is a quote mine. You go first.
They soon went on a walk together because the gangling-eared boy claimed he was a guest of the temple under the command of his honorable master and mistress who had sent him away to fetch water. When asked why he must found himself all the way deep in the woods, he only professed that it wasn't up to him to question their specifics. For in the past, when servants began to question themselves and others too much, they never fared to fare their given tasks. The acolyte right-heartedly joked that he had hoped his veneer training hadn't made their way to the boy's vessel, to which the boy gave a silent refusal. Like when he was offered to help to carry the thing.
Beautiful.
That's the only way to actually enjoy this. You need the cap cut. You need the cap audio experience for this book.
Most dishonorable writing. It was a low point for me, and it also does not help that this is the longest story by a lot is 19 pages. This is this book's Battle of the Somme. Like
this is this book's KGB Agents from the Stars, from Beyond the Stars. Deep cut.
Oh, that's a low blow. It's better than Holy Hunt, at least.
It is not better than Holy Hunt. It is
No,
not even
Holy
close
Hunt
to
is
better than Holy
absolutely
Hunt.
better
So much better. That is.
No, y'all have like PTSD from Holy Hunt. I understand.
I have PTSD
Miles,
from this.
Cut it.
But-
Why didn't you cut it, Miles? You don't have to accept everything.
Yeah.
Listen, he was offered a hand job. He got cum everywhere.
Yeah.
The keyboard. You know how it is. He had no choice. Or I will give actually my bet. I'll give you one of the most kind of concise and clearest prose now. I'll give you like the most where it kind of makes sense. All right, this is the quote. Strangely, being the only one that can save her, he dragged his ever so strangely energized body to her. But as he picked her up, slowly turning the dress and jewelries she had adorned herself into specks of dust, realized to be gold, and her former attire turned gold dust, flew into the fiery spectacle, and came spewing from the infernal maw a bunny as white as Hokkaido snow. The rabbit hopped aloof and passed the disastrous scene into a path behind the acolyte, and a nude lady to the darkness, unfitting its fur. Yet it noticed itself being left alone, so it came back, looked at the acolyte, and threw itself back into the fire. The acolyte screamed, but was too late, but then came spewing out two more bunnies. One stayed by his side, while the other took the path beforehand. As the other had gone unseen, the one who stayed, understanding how glued the acolyte still was, threw itself back into the fire, and the acolyte screamed, and it repeated. The bunnies multiplied in two every time, and the acolyte saw and smelled many charred bunnies. That is the best prose you will get out of this text, my boys and girls.
This goddamn word salad. The thing is that like even a direct translation from Japanese wouldn't sound like this. Like it's just actually it's comedically bad.
Yeah, it's the meta thing. It's his idea of like, you know, those anime dubs, like the fan dubs, like what Little Karibo used to do for Yu-Gi-Oh?
The thing is that like you could read and I admit to having done this. You could read like a machine translated fucking like manhwa or other sort of like comic, and it would not. It's not like this. Like it's not that bad. And this is just it's nonsense, and
it doesn't feel translated at all.
Yeah, it's just really bad. And I feel like it should have been. I feel like this one should have been cut, and I don't think I've said that about anything we've read so far. So.
It's better. It's better than the water.
No.
It is not
It's
even
better
fucking
than
close. You are unhinged.
Yes,
This is
it's unique.
This is
It's uniquely bad.
at delusional takes. This fucking thing is not worse than a completely coherent thematic story.
But it's entertainingly
No,
bad.
it's not.
It didn't bore
no,
me. This
it's-
didn't bore
this
me.
bored the shit out of me. This was like a random number generator associated with a fucking.
This was
dictionary.
ChatGPT writing.
Yes, it's unique. No, this was not ChatGPT. ChatGPT makes more sense than
ChatGPT
this.
could not possibly
bad
make
grammar.
something this lacking in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's unique. It's actually technically unique in that sense.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, yeah, all sorts of shit that fucking blows. Is
Again, my
unique.
farting happy birthday in prose, like, you know, it's clever, but do you want to read like 20 pages of that?
No, it's Occam's razor. Like, let's be honest, the guy saying, "Oh, it's written bad on purpose," is a cope, right? It's a cope. It doesn't feel like a translation at all, right? He just kind of tweaked it to sound retarded because he probably is retarded, right? Not even in the good sense, the bad sense. But the reason why it's somewhat entertaining is because I have the philosophy that as long as you don't bore me, I can at least say something. This says something. This gives me energy, at least. This is my rupee dagger. It stabs me and fills me with my lone life.
I would rather that you murder a barmaid than that you endorse this story.
Well, too bad, because there's a theme in this. The bunnies, the rabbit appears twice. The theme of a rabbit choking on smoke comes with the girl smoking cigarettes, who dies. Right? There's a thematic through line. And like he has sexual guilt, and one guy gets like a crow like attacks some guy's dick.
Yeah.
You remember that part? It's once you actually the imagery.
I'm actually shocked that you fucked up basic elements of the completely normal the stories that were written completely normally, but you like got the narrative aspects of the one that's 3/4 gibberish, and I'm starting to feel like this one was just written for you,
Gabe Core,
because you're the one who would fail the schizophrenia test.
Hey, joke's on you. I was the one who wrote this bitch.
He was Amosai the whole time. Hey, that's a conflict of interest.
What, nepotism on a 4chan aspect?
It's not nepotism if it's just you.
Self-suck.
It's like it's got to be one stage of separation at least.
Hey, there's no. Listen, I have split personalities. Like he's my Asian, like what's it called? A fubi, like the demons. The X thing where you dream up your waifu. It's like a writing version of that, right? A pulpa, right? A pulpa or a pulpy. You know the one. Topa, yes. Yes, exactly. And think about it. He fantasizes about this because he has that dream sequence, right, where he sees the eye and the flesh, and he sees no mouth, right? And the ideas of the masculine and feminine. If you notice, the idea of transsexuality, because he mentions the Thailand ladyboys, right? So the ideas of sex and kind of being damned for your sex and kind of realizing that physical pleasures are not worth it, because there's other than the 3 teenage girls. Women aren't really portrayed, and they end up dying, right? Other than he himself, and if you notice, the reason why it's called Saccharin, because he noticed the little monk boy, the one with the gangled ears, right, who's a eunuch. He notices how he sings more beautifully than any woman. So in a lot of ways, the only way you can get any real interpretation of this is as like a kind of a trans story. Because he literally becomes Saccharin by getting jumped and having his balls cut off in the end.
I have no idea.
Did I filter y'all?
Yeah.
Cap, what do you think?
I'm attempting to not.
All right. I'm pushing the button.
Gabe seal of approval. Second best story so far.
Oh my lord.
Easily.
Oh, and the train don't stop.
I didn't bring enough beers for this. By the way, everyone go buy some Bell's American Wheat Ale Oberon. It should be on sale because it's a great summer beer, and we are moving towards the season of decay as things fall apart. Center does not hold. Gabe liked
the West has
liked Saccharin.
It's over. Gabe has fallen.
We're going to the coal mines
right.
still, boys. We're digging deeper. Next is The Trees by Donovan Hall. So the Trees is a story of a man who is afraid of trees. He starts storing his apartment. He's invited to a birthday party. Was it his brother, I believe, who lives out in the country. He likes living in the city because there's not so many of those damn trees around being loud on every street corner. Anyway, our protagonist, he sees a news report about, trees being violent, or, how actually they're not that violent, something like that. And anyway, he goes out the country. He's nervous about the trees. It's just a normal birthday party, basically. His sister's there. They cut cake.
But there are all sorts of trees just at the edge of the lawn. Like they're waiting. They're waiting for you to turn your back.
Strike. And he makes a comment like, oh, maybe you should come home with me, sis. Like, don't stay here. She's like, oh, it'll be no problem. He goes home, turns on the news, and what do you know?
His brother has his brother also. You forgot his brother has a home defense.
Yeah,
chainsaw.
leaning against the wall. Chekhov's
Which is never
chainsaw.
used.
It is not Chekhov's
Which is
chainsaw.
never fucking used.
Yeah.
It's Anton's chainsaw.
Yeah, Anton, friend of the show.
Yeah.
Chainsaw. Anyway, so that was it. It was really one of those, and Gabe, you kind of alluded to this earlier. This is one that it's a napkin concept, and then there's never any cleverness to meet the promise of that idea. Yeah. Basically, the idea is, haha. Trees are, I guess, black people. Basically, arborists could be here. I hate arborists. That's my my line for this one.
Trees could be here.
A well-seasoned pine.
Oh
no, his sister gets pine.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It gives birth to a dark black pine cone.
What? Resin burners.
yeah, what will they learn?
You call it.
Paid the charcoal till sorry.
It was just. It was. I mean, this was this. Yeah, like I get it. There was a concept here. I don't know what to say. All these scholars, all these young scholars.
It could have been done in a really clever way. It could have been funny. I can think of I could think of ideas for it.
Our one-liners are more funny than what he did with this.
Well,
literally,
two of us have one-liners
honestly,
that are funnier than what he did with this.
Oh, come on! When you see a tree, you gotta flee.
Yeah.
That's good. That's solid. It's better than there's nothing here because you first think I thought he would do something clever, like he's a schizo. It's the normal world, and he just thinks trees are out to get him. Right? Okay, that's funny. That can work. But then the other characters start talking about it. His sister starts talking about it. And like, okay, is the sister like, oh, my brother's a schizo, just play along. Yeah. But then the fucking chainsaw comes in.
Yeah, no, everyone
right?
is actually, he's got the chain. He doesn't just have a chainsaw. He's got like a chainsaw. He's got a chainsaw like inside.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
He's got the AR-15 of
Yes.
chainsaws. Right? Like a pimped out one. And it's like, I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. I'm here. As soon as the chainsaw is like, okay, this is real. Oh, shit. What is it going to do? Fuck all. He bitches about his brother-in-law. The sister cleans up the dishes. There's just filler, micro filler in a fucking short story. She leaves. He comes home and her car got attacked by a pine tree. And,
I can tell
that's
from the pine needles and the stickiness of the sap that this was a southern yellow pine.
Yeah, it could have been so good. It could have been amazing. But this is the idea, like you got Vanna Black, right? You got the concept idea. You know, the sky just suddenly poof, it's just a void, you know? But it actually fulfills the circuit. The idea of the ideas actually comes full circle. This guy, yet again, it's a napkin idea. Okay, killer trees.
Kill someone
what
off
do I do
screen
next?
to the end.
That's it. You don't even see a tree attack. How does a tree attack work? I want to see that.
A lot of other people did a lot more in fucking 5 pages in this book. And I don't know. This one was pretty whatever. I mean, simultaneously too on the nose and just
uneventful.
Yeah. Anyway,
all right, push the button. Bzz. Next up.
Bzz. Up next, it's Hexen and the Real Witch.
Hexen.
By Philip Hamilton.
All right, this is probably in the top 6 stories in here. Just, it's not good or anything. It's just very comfy. It's like James Gunn's Scooby-Doo movies from early 2000s?
This one is actually good, though.
Yes! It basically is. It's like a raunchy Scooby-Doo. Basically, the story is that this Marilyn Manson knockoff, a guy named Hexen, He gets popular. It's like a pseudo like early 2000s like shock goth, like Alex Cooper or Marilyn Manson. The early 2000s shtick is popular again on TikTok in this universe. So there's a sense of a gothic revival. So this guy named Hexen, who is from Ohio, he basically gets popular. It was a nerd, nobody, a hardcore like cartoonishly hardcore early 2000s Peter Hitchens atheist, all those Christian fascists and all that kind of shtick. He has a performance. He's talking to a reporter. All of this takes place past tense. He's in a coffee shop talking to a reporter. He tells him about a time where he actually meets a real witch. And how he meets the real witch is he has a performance, and he's like, "Oh, where are my real witches at?" Right? And a girl raises her hand. She's got great tits. She's got green hair and like facial piercings. So he takes her to his place, and he expects the sex, right? But of course, he's a poser. He's actually not even that into. He doesn't even know Wicca. Not really. He just kind of knows basic D&D shit about it. His house is basically decorated by fucking IKEA, right? And so he gets the girl into his living room. A cat comes along, a stray cat, and it turns out it's a trap, except it's a magical wand instead of a penis. It is an actual real witch, a for real holy deal feel witch. And basically she punishes him sexually. So she basically roofies him with a potion. He's there naked on the floor. She draws a hexagram on the floor, puts the cat there, and says, "You are a faker, you're a poser, so either you kill this cat, or I put a curse on you and your career is completely ruined." So, of course, he ends up killing the cat and saving his career, but he has a kind of a crisis of faith. There's an aspect of this where he says, like, he kind of acknowledges that Satan and the Wicca and all the witch shit can't exist without God, but he still is very anti-Christian. So he kind of has this weird, I don't know, confessional to the journalist, and then he kind of fucks off. And there's a little hint of the witch in the background as a barista. And that's the overall main plot synopsis. But the reason why it's fun is that it's unique just enough. It's campy. The sex wasn't that good. The sex scene, like where he says he's only a little bit excited as he crawls on her with a knife. Of course, obviously, he should be much more visually excited at that. You know what I mean? It's like, my God, I fantasize about this. You think it's torture, right? Or whatever. The point being is that it has just enough flavor, just enough of that. It's purposely campy. It's purposely cringe, right? And there's just a little hint of something beyond this, where he actually questions his faith as an atheist, because there's part of the back of his head where he says, "How can a Satan exist without a God?" And of course, nothing's done with that, obviously. But just enough to say this is at least a 5.8.
0.8's pretty specific.
5.8 out of what?
6 is big.
Out of 10.3.
10.
Jesus. Yeah. out of a total possible.
The low stakes.
I can be
the low
argued
stakes
for a
got
6.
it for me.
Square root of
It was like,
111.
who gives a shit about this cat? It's literally just a random cat.
Would you just kill a random cat?
Yeah, happily.
Well, no, but-
I hate cats.
Just because it just... Oh.
But he's a dweeb. Like, he gets butthurt because some kid on TikTok actually killed a cat for real.
Yeah, he's like... Yeah, he's like... He's a normie, right? Like, he's just a normie who's not at all into the weird stuff. It's purely shtick for him, right? So, I mean, I thought the story was interesting. Like that it was, I liked that it was written as an interview with that, with the journalist. I mean, it was sort of like a.
I think it was kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I mean, this is another one that's like kind of a Rod Serling-esque, right? Like this is another one that's sort of like a Twilight Zone kind of weirdness, where the guy sort of encounters the super real in an otherwise like completely ordinary scenario. and he can't even like verify the reality of it, right? Because the problem with sacrificing the cat is that it's a counterfactual, because his career didn't eat shit, right? He just knows that he had a very strange encounter, and that she claimed that killing the cat would prevent a bad outcome, right? So he's kind of he's kind of confessing his own like turpitude and lack of a moral compass, while
What? No, wait. You're giving a little too extra depth, because he straight out says that after not killing the cat, he initially doesn't kill the cat. He gets a call from his bandmates. They all got sick. The tour's gonna be canceled. It's revealed that it's actually true, because they all simultaneously get sick, and he has a sore throat immediately after.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the purported ill effects, like he literally just said that they're like not feeling so well. So the first sign that there could be any truth to it, he kills the cat immediately. Right.
But they pussy out on him like at the detail. Like it should have been. I don't know. I guess it's more PG-13, but to have some intense visceralness, we should have got more details on him killing the cat, like him trying to think of how to kill a cat.
I disagree. I thought it was handled really well.
You don't think so?
Yeah, especially when the especially when the at the end. I mean, like one of the last lines of that one was the journalist asking, "Did you kill the cat?" And he says, "I prefer the term sacrifice." And to him, it was a sacrifice. It really was a sacrifice. Like he did not want to. He didn't want to do it, right? But
he's finally an opposer.
And he had a payoff from the sacrifice. Like it was a transaction. So there was a cost for him to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I liked this one. I definitely think it's more than a rounding up to 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd
it's
probably
cozy.
be more of a 6
I
out of
also
10.
like it.
It's solid. Nothing really bad, but just the low stakes for me. Like, yeah, I think showing the cat being killed actually would have added something, or maybe wouldn't have fit the PG vibe. But if it's again, it's a weird Tales thing. Like, are we going for something more disturbing or extreme, or is this supposed to be like a lighthearted thing? I don't know. Maybe it's just an expectations thing because of the context of where the story is. But I wanted something.
Yeah, you could have played it comically, like he's never actually killed an animal before, so he doesn't know how to approach it. Like it hisses at him and he drops a knife or something. Like you could have played it for fun.
Just fucking up killing a cat for 14 pages.
I know some pretty good fucked up animal death stories. My buddy has a dad who's like a farmer, and
I'll bet you do.
and he's like a sweetheart guy, and so he's really bad at killing things. And so like one time he like killed a cat that was like dying by like covering its face with a wet towel. And was like waterboarding it to death. It was the most fucked up story.
Waterboarded a cat.
Like like there was something where like part of the cat's brain was showing. Like it was in really bad shape. Like and so he killed it that way.
Should have just poured the water into the skull and just killed it with the water. Killed it with the water pressure. It would have been it'd probably been unconscious immediately.
Man, I feel so bad about this. Let me waterboard the motherfucker.
All right.
Yeah.
And that man was a protagonist of I Waterbow Clowns for a Living.
All right. So Portraits of St. Kevin's. So this is a story about an abandoned asylum, a real place. This is based on a true story. So St. Kevin's Asylum is a real building that overlooks the city of Cork in Ireland, and many of the events referenced in this do in fact have in fact happened. It references a fire at one point, and there was a somewhat, at least in Ireland, famous fire in St. Kevin's, because the building is so massive. Anyway, so this is a bunch of vignettes about this building, and so it goes through a few different things. Sort of the experience of having this old structure on the skyline, because it's perched on a hill over the town. The town's sort of built onto a valley, really, and so the building kind of looks down over the rest of the town. And when it fell into disuse, and then when it was burned, it's sort of like this glowering edifice over all of these people. And there are stories of rats in the walls and kids daring people to go into this abandoned building. I mean, I like it. I'm kind of an architectural and built environment nerd. So the way that this was written actually made me. I did not know that St. Kevin's was a real place. I had no idea what it was before I read this story. But the way that it was written made me Google it, and absolutely real location. So I would be surprised if some of these stories, especially the ones about challenging a boy to go in alone, would not be it would not be autobiographical in a certain sense. I like this. I thought it was comfy, and it is. I have similar feelings about certain buildings in my town, which I will not disclose for fear of doxing myself.
For fear of the guy who wrote Saccharin, for death threats to come to you.
Come find me, Amasai. You will find yourself a grave, man.
Yeah, you would not be buried Shinto. No, I agree with you. Out of all the stories that are played straight, this is actually kind of perfect, and in the sense of it actually pulls off what it wants to do. Because almost all the comical stories, except the other stories we'll get to, that played for laughs, fall flat. So that out of all the slog before this, this is extremely refreshing. In terms of the overall evocations, this quote should get you by in terms of what you want to get out of this. So, the old man dies of a needle in his arm, and the last face he sees is that of a bloated rat watching him from the far corner of what is left of the room. He does not hear the building grieve. He does not know how St. Kevin's wishes it could take him in his arms and bear him to paradise. He does not know that he dies in the presence of a friend who loves him more dearly than has ever loved anyone. And why should it not? They are alike. This man came into the world screaming and formless in the full, unbridled potential of a newborn life. He had not asked for what he was given. These rooms had not asked to serve as prisons for the sick, and these windows had not asked to ring with cries of fear and anguish. And now the two of them, the old man and the building that cradles him in his death, will meet the same end, abandoned and decrepit. There'll be food for the rats. That is genuinely a banger.
Yeah, for
piece
sure.
Of prose.
The mirroring the decay of the building with the decay of the man, and the man a failed member of this society that's allowed both of them to fall into ruin. Like, I like this one.
Mm-hmm. And the contrast between a newborn and cradle that's a great piece of prose.
This one, if I did have to like knock it down a little, I still don't feel, I guess I don't feel like the theme is that coherent. I guess I don't feel like the theme is that
it's a little
on
aimless.
point.
It reminds me
with Tales of the Unreal. I like with the concept. like, and this is, and in especially in this case, that is in no way knocking the story, because I think that I think this could have and probably should have been in a more literary anthology. But I did like it on its own merits, quite a bit. So, but no, I mean, I like this one, and I do think it does kind of have the maybe not haunted by actual ghosts, but haunted a building haunted rather than by geists, by zeitgeists. Like, it's,
Right.
Okay, so the next story is The Sub from Orlick Zarian. So this is a story in which so it's told in a I guess it would be it's first person sort of, but it's first person recounting a story that was told to him. So basically this guy and his brother are living together. They're moving, the younger brother's moving out, and he asks his brother to tell him a story. So his brother tells him a story about the apartment before he moved in. And at one point, he had a friend staying with him who had his girlfriend move in, and this girl was very very strange, and the buddy has to go on a trip, so it's just the girl and the brother who are in the apartment at the time. And so she starts in the nights, she starts making some absolutely wild some absolutely wild sexual sounds are coming from this room. And brother knows that his friend is gone, so it's just this girl and presumably a different guy in there. So, because there's a male voice and her own voice, and the things that are being said are unbelievably vulgar. Like, it's just stuff that it's not revealed at this point in the story what's being said, but it is just described as let's see, quote, some pretty reprehensible shit. So the brother bursts into the room. There's nobody else there. And he concludes that not like the guy who was in there is not in there at all. But so she must have been doing both voices. So so she's standing there, and eventually he becomes like kind of like mesmerized by this woman, because she's described as pretty, but she has an overwhelming bush, like an unbelievably huge bush, like a bush so large and vast that it belongs in a Lewis Woolston story. So,
imagine the smell.
I will not.
I am.
And so he
Okay.
no, I was trying to find the quote, sorry.
There's some amazing quotes in this.
He says, I was disgusted by her for maybe 10 seconds, but then I wasn't moving. I became totally fascinated by her weird-looking bush. I couldn't leave the room. Something was keeping me there, and it felt like it was hiding in her pubes, like a magnet or something. I didn't even think about it. I just pointed between her legs, and I said to her, I think there's someone hiding in there. She stopped yelling, because I had burst into the room, and I got onto the bed. She told me there were people in there, but it didn't make it any of my business. She covered herself with her shirt. It wasn't like a sexual moment at that point. I wasn't even aroused necessarily, but I begged her to let me see the people. I felt drunk. She laid down and I kept begging. And this is where my memory gets really foggy. At some point, she started running her fingers through my hair, and after this weird back and forth, she finally agreed to show me. She pulled up the edge of her shirt, and immediately it sucked me in. The individual hairs were moving around and vibrating and emitting this soft, almost metallic-sounding melody. I put my face right into so her crotch filled up my whole vision. She reached down and with 2 fingers, she spread open her labia. And on her inner labia, I saw something that looked like a tattoo. But then I realized it was moving. It was the silhouette of a man driving a motorcycle. It kind of looked like a cartoon, or an overexposed black and white movie on her skin or something. And there were other figures too, little people moving around like real people. And she said they are real people. And when she touches herself, they show up. And so and so they like and so they have sex, and the music continues being made by this bush, and he ends up hearing someone behind him, and he can see this guy in his peripheral vision, and he's still in this insane trance, and they started saying those, the reprehensible shit, and that stuff was that.
He smells his cologne,
right.
too.
They were cursing the entire human race. She was saying they shouldn't be allowed to die until they're served as slaves to slaves to lower slaves. And and it's like the most like intensely, or I mean, I given some time, I could probably think of something, but it's fairly degrading. So, so after that, they continue their tryst actually, but she's at that point shaved, and eventually she accuses him of taking advantage of her, not necessarily rape, but she said that he knew about her. He was taking advantage of her condition, and her condition was that she's a sub. And nothing weird ever happened again. Nothing, the people and the voices and the other man never happened again. It was and the younger brother who is recounting this story being told to him, had been staying in that room, and his older brother had never disclosed to him that this strange scenario had taken place there during that whole time period, and they never spoke of it again.
Yeah, absolute Kino pussy core.
What zero pussy? No, what too much pussy does to motherfucker? I really like the story.
I'll bet you did.
Because when you think about it, no, not for the reasons you think. It's not for goon reasons. This is not for goon to gooner. This is for Gabe the Catholic. This is actually a really good Tradcaf story.
All right, I'm listening.
I'm here for this analysis.
It's a story about a girl's body count. I mean, the dialogue in the first thing name drops it basically. Right? He said, "Well, he didn't he drive a 2002? He did," said my brother. Which funny story, by the way. He actually wrecked it 2 months ago, going over the pass. He almost died, but that's neither here nor there. Did you happen to remember what religion he was? Christian, I guess. Specifically, though, Catholic. Exactly right, he said, sitting back in his chair. Now, that's not exactly important to the events of the story I'm about to tell you, but just think about all the things you tend to associate with Catholics. I feel like add something, knowing Doug was a papist. So he he basically just slams this in your face. And by the way, you didn't mention this. The opening dialogue is very great, very snappy. The pacing of this, the 3-cigarette story structure, the dialogue between two brothers is very good.
I do like the idea of the 3-cigarette story. Like, I asked my brother to tell me a 3-cigarette story. Mm-hmm. This is the type of thing, like, I'm a little bit of a sucker for this type of thing, and I mentioned this with, when we talked about Lewis Woolston's The Last Free Man, and I think I've mentioned this. I mentioned this when we talked about the third story in Millennium, but these sort of like low class sort of method of couching a story,
the bar
in
story,
like a lower middle class or lower class method of settling into a story. I find to be pretty appealing, actually.
It slips you right in.
Yeah. It you just slip right into it. And I mean, I realize that maybe this is a generational thing because I grew up watching Clerks or something like that. When you just have like. When you just have
Clerks.
Like a dialogue heavy sort of meandering, like low class type thing like that. It's a little bit like what this is, right? You could definitely imagine this being like retold in a black and white film in that way. You know what I mean? So
back when Kevin Smith was good, who also deals with themes of Catholicism.
R.I.P. Kevin Smith. He had one really good and like 3 decent movies in him, and a bunch of shit.
Mallrats was good. I like Mallrats.
That's one of the 3 pretty decent ones.
Well, he also dealt with Catholicism, like the weed got to him. Like, but the thing what I'm trying to say here is that it has this low class thing, right? The dialogue, it starts right off with a dialogue, boom, 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 right? It's believable. You slip right into the world. 2 brothers having a cigarette. Listen, dude, 3-cigarette story. Tell me and get the fuck out, right? Because he even says, "This is the last cigarette. You better put a bow on the story," right? It's actually paced and constructed beautifully. The pacing on this is perfect. And you could reread this twice. This is one of the ones I actually did reread like 2 or 3 times. That wasn't Saccharin, right? And it deals with similar themes to Saccharin to a certain degree. I actually do think when the only dialogue the woman says, if you notice the fucked up thing she says, oh, they're slaves. Worse than that, like slaves to slaves. It's this like a top of like toxic symbiotic relationships. She's talking about sex. She's talking about like what's it called? Not hedonism. Lust, right? Because she doesn't talk about it. She's just like, I won't tell him if you don't, right? And so there's this weird sense of people kind of just suffering, sexual suffering, right?
Yeah,
right. Because he drops it. It's kind of obvious. He name drops. He basically tells the reader. He tells the reader, "Hey, I name drop Catholics, specifically Catholics. Please remember this. Please make sure to bring your copy of St. Augustine's Confessions while reading this story."
Yeah.
Right. It's. I'm not saying in a bad way, by the way. I'd rather be hit in the face by a good theme than nothing at all. This is fantastically constructed. It's literally it's magical realism.
Well, she's
about a girl's
the
body
sub,
count.
and then he's the slave to the slave to her. Literally in the story when he loses control, where the pussy magic hits. The writing in this one's just outstanding. This is probably one of my first.
Yeah, because you don't understand the sub thing. Because she describes herself as a sub, and you get confused at first. Like, how is she the sub in this situation? But then you realize the whole sub is a slave of a slave. Like, she doesn't even necessarily control it. They're very awkward about it afterwards. It's just kind of like a thing that happens. She almost gets possessed. It gets possessed by her own pussy magic. It's literally just a sexual slavery all the way down. And that's why he says, I never want to have sex again, because I always feel like someone's right behind me. I'm just going to be some other guy. It's the incel meme, like the incel posters, right? There's always some other guy.
The ladder of
meme,
dicks.
Or the guy with the bouquet.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the rosy chain of dicks. It's a non-crass version of this, and I think I do think that's actually the point of this story, right? It's a very sad story because it ends with not a whimper, but a very like just kind of his brother almost believes it, but kind of bullshit. So there's very awkward. You can see the awkward air between them, and he never brings it up again. It's so this weird slight moment of a revelation about sex. This objectively big deal, right? He doesn't even know this is true or not. This is a vision, whatever. His sexuality, his eros, is permanently tainted by this, and not in a grandiose way. It's permanently scarred, but no one sees the scar, and no one ever talks about it ever again. Mm-hmm. It just ends perfectly. Everything about this story, like basically, the second half of this collection is great. This is a backloaded collection. Yeah. This story, Kevin, Mouths, like this is probably top 3. This is like, I would probably say this is like third.
That might be something to put in
terms
at the
of
end,
actually getting the point
like
across.
If someone picks up a free copy of this, like what's like the 3 to read, right? Like I don't know, just something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the end, because I think I know mine. I suspect they're probably similar. Okay, good. That's the pussy story.
Pussy story done.
Gabe, I waterboard clouds for a living.
Now, waterboard clowns for a living. This one is the trees, but good. It's the same shtick. It's the same LOL so crazy situation, but it actually pulls it off. He actually does something with it to a certain degree, and also is a better writer. So, this excerpt is all you need to know about this story.
Who's the writer, Gabe?
Flower Shop. Yes, Flower Shop. Flower Shop, whoever the fuck you are. You're actually a really good writer. I like you. But don't name drop your title, please, in the story. I'm tired of that. But anyway. It has to be a scientific law, peer-reviewed, shined and waxed, that nobody likes their job. Me, personally, I'm pretty sure I hate my job more than anyone on this planet, dead or alive throughout history. Rounded up to anyone in the whole solar system, mole man underground, colonists on the moon, Martians at home, vacationing on Pluto, wherever the hell it is on Planet X, and Filipinos, if they actually worked. God damn it, do I hate my job. You're thinking it can't be worse than this bullshit you put up work. Look, I'm sure it's rough, but I waterboard clowns for a living. That's the hook line. And just like the previous story, the dialogue, the tone, the voice just sucks you right in. You know this character right from the jump. You have a hook, you have a POV. It is beautiful. It sucks you right in. The protagonist, as he says, he waterboards clowns for a living. And basically, this is a day in the life of a clown torturer. He waterboards a clown, literally, in this. And he just describes it. It's very black humor. It's a deeply black, cynical humor. He's basically treating it like a 9-to-5 job. You know, he's counting down the minutes between breaths he's allowing him to take. Because his job's not to kill him. It's just to torture him. He finds him in his man trap. They have a man trap for some reason. They take him into a basement. No, it's like a oddly Kafka-esque.
Well, the man trap's for the clowns.
Yeah, the man trap is for the clowns, but there's no reason for it other than there's a client that videotapes it, apparently. But it's actually kind of Kafka-esque. It's a funny version of the penal colony in an odd way, other than without the actual depth or meaning, right? It's a B-side Kafka story, but a guy writing a B-side Kafka story well is actually like fantastic. Right, other than the name drop. Don't name drop your fucking titles in the main text, please. But it's actually very funny.
Especially not this many times. I think it was like 30 times he says it. That's an exaggeration. It's a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't ruin the story, but it's like, okay, you're pushing my SNL sketch thing. Like you're becoming a cringe parody of what you're trying to already parodize. You know, but he straddles the border just enough to where it actually maintains the humor. So he straddles the humor just enough because he describes it. It's very Tarantino. Graphic violence. You literally see this poor guy. The makeup falls off his face. He's vomiting, and he takes a smoke break. The Filipinos out back are fucking taking a smoke break. He can't have enough of this shit. He's a blue collar goon. He talks like Joe Rogan, right? The Brooklyn accent, right? So he basically just goes through his day, tortures a clown, sends him the fuck away, Where does he send him to? No one knows. He doesn't care. The boss man tells him to send him back into the man trap, or the clown trap, as he says. He takes it to the boss. He clocks out for the day. He doesn't even know his coworker. They never speak to each other. He even says, we never speak to each other, and we never will. And he fantasizes about maybe honking his nose, playing around, joking. Nothing. It's just pure boredom. It's mundane. He goes out afterwards to a cafe. He sees a beautiful street performer, a girl who is not a clown, but a jester. He has a whole dialogue riff about, technically she's not a clown. And it has nothing to do with my job, okay? She's just attractive, right? Do I talk to her? No. I fantasize her about talking to me. But you know what? A man has simple pleasures, all right? So I have my cig, I got my sandwich, I look at her, and I have a horrible life. Because...
I waterboard clowns for a living.
Punchline. Clowns for a living. That's the horror. That's the cringe. It's horrible.
I want to push back a little
right?
bit. I do feel like it veers a little bit towards trees in terms of, like, I wish he had pulled some noses or something in terms of like exploring the silliness of the concept some more. I guess maybe that's breaking the whole conceit of it. If to your point, the Kafka-esque.
It's got to be played. This has to be played straight.
I don't know, but
like he has to do a horrible thing. Like he has to do this like absolutely horrible thing that he doesn't believe in, that he has absolutely no convictions related to, that he doesn't understand the purpose of around people who are completely alien to him. He is totally disconnected, alienated, and resentful of absolutely every aspect of this. So, yeah.
But then the tone, if you're going to keep repeating the line, I waterboard clowns for a living, obviously that's meant to be humorous as like a punchline. Like there's a humorous angle to that line.
Yeah.
And so there's like this contradiction of this humorous punchline repeated every 5 paragraphs to the mundane, repetitive, Kafkaesque, blah blah blah. Like, oh god, I'm the cockroach clown torture man. Like I felt like there was a little like maybe trimming out the repetitive of that, the punchline would have reduced it, but with it in, I was like, okay, so it's like there's a comedy undercurrent to this, and so it's like, then why are we not like exploring it a little bit more in the thing? I don't know. That's my take. I respect your guys' point of view that it would detract from the more like I guess grim aspect of it.
Yeah, I think where are the clowns going? Who's paying for the clowns? Like, where what's Aragorn's tax policy? Like, it's not the point.
No, I mean,
right? Like,
why does Gregory turn to Le Bug?
Yeah, I just mean something like more inventive torture or something, just to play up to that humor element. If the humor element is included, like I feel like it should have been dived into more, or should have been cut back. It's just a little bit of a slight, like an awkward balance. Again, I feel like I come across as more negative than I feel, because I did like this one as well.
Well, dude, he shares your criticism. He thinks like, man, I really want to honk his nose.
Yeah, he's teasing me.
About what's with the chicken? Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I should ask, what's with the chicken, man? What's with the rubber chicken?
Yeah.
Right? He fantasizes about doing funny shit with the clown, but he doesn't bother. Right? He's just bored. He compares it to McDonald's. All right, and the voice. I understand your complaints with this, because I can think of like a Honda. Yet again, technically speaking, in terms of inventiveness with clowns, the previous story, the Skyless story, the Silver Lining story. I love the opening line of that story, where the clown, his balloons pop. That's actually technically more clown humor related than this, unintentionally, in terms of clown humor, but he's not going for that. The protagonist himself is bored of this. He knows it's ridiculous. Hey, I waterboard clowns for a living. You know what I mean? He's like, it's ridiculous. It's so cringe. I spend 8 hours a day here. He even says it like, the easiest job there is, and I fucking hate it. 8 hours of this. It's fucking torture. It's pure black comedy. And the voice carries it, unlike the trees. The trees are 1, too short, B, very vague. Vague, this is vague because we don't know anything. It's intentionally vague. But there's parameters. There's order of the structure. This is his job. I waterboard clowns for a living. I spent 8 hours waterboarding this clown. I send them off. With the trees, we don't know the rules of the trees. The bitch just dies in the end. We don't even see the attack. This is like a gas chamber. The tree is gaseous. It just floats in the air. There's no parameters. He's in this 80s house. He describes an 80s house with the shag carpeting. Like, it's actually contained. The structure and the voice binds the gaseous, very vagueness of this world and gives it some concrete reality. It gives it stability.
No, I agree with that. I feel like there's a tension between the humor and the grimness that's not, like, I feel like that more of a lane should have been picked, but it's fine if we don't agree on that. I still, I enjoyed it.
That's a valid take.
Anything else on this one?
I don't.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really. I mean, I see why you might draw a parallel between this one and the trees, but I mean, but I do disagree with it. I would say, I don't really. I mean, I don't see the parallel here. I mean, I realize that it's got this like also random conceptual sort of twist to it, but the trees is supposed to be like a fairly hackneyed allegory, and this is played for the implausibility. Like, it's played for the fact that it's so meaningless.
Well, yeah, but it's a gimmick actually done well. The tree is a gimmick done, but that's basically my main point. It's a napkin idea.
Okay. Anyway, I think we agree that this one's
solid. We've beaten this clown to death.
We really fucked this guy.
A solid
waterboard him like a chicken or a cat or whatever the fuck it was.
We really watered his flower.
The
flower thing, because they're just
mixed up.
Yeah. But he's hitting the buzzer.
He's slamming the buzzer.
The Marlin Spike by Miles McNaughty Pants tells the story of a guy named Hansen, who his wife, his son, they're at a lake. The son is just carefree, diving in the water, disappearing for minutes at a time, as him and his wife are resting on the shore. And basically, it sort of has this beat, like a lake terror kind of vibe, where the son finds a marlin spike in the water, shows it to his dad. His dad, explains what a marlin spike is. Then flash to later, Mr. Hansen goes to the bar to get shit-faced, try and chat up the bartender. He is basically that guy at the bar who just goes solo, gets drunk, and starts making a scene most of the time. And while he's drinking and just getting shit-faced, kid and wife and kid at home, the memory comes flooding back from seeing this marlin spike that I believe had his initials on it. And the memory is of the night him and his good friend many years ago went out, and this friend, I'm just going to go out and say it. Hansen did nothing wrong. So his friend starts talking about how he fucks and bucks and fucks and chucks this chick that Hansen used to date, and they broke up, and then he got with, and just would not shut the fuck up about how lucky he was to be with her, and how, what bright their future was, and how Hansen was a retard for ever letting her slip through his fingers. And Hansen's just like, all right, you know what? I'm taking matters into my own hands. Gets the guy shit-faced, serves him a couple drinks too many.
Violate the bro code, get boat murdered.
I approve.
Incel rage. Incel rage.
And then just beats him in the back of the head with a marlin spike, which I had to Google just to see what it looks like. It doesn't look like something you want to get hit in the head with. Nice little metal rod. Like a flat side to it. So just beats the guy to death. His eyeball pops out, and then he's like, oh fuck, I gotta dispose of the body. And he has a panic attack, resolves to fix it, and then bag the chick at the end of the day. We skip back ahead. Hansen is leaving the bar, basically getting pushed out by the bartender, like please go home, dude. Drives home drunk. I think he thinks he sees someone in the parking lot. He gets spooked. Drives home. The memory of this, night is kind of still playing in his head and haunting him. he gets home and his son has been kidnapped. There's an eyeball on the floor, and him and the wife are like freaking out. The revenge of a vengeful spirit of his friend has come and saw its revenge. And this one was pretty good. It was my big
pure pulpy goodness.
Yeah, it was pure pulpy goodness, like ghost story kind of vibes. My big complaint was just that it was so straightforward. Like I knew as soon as they started talking on the boat, like everything that would happen after, pretty much. But it was still well done, and it was and it cracked me up, like the build up for Hansen to murder him, because it was like I don't know, maybe this is my incel rage, but I was like, it's so justified. Why wouldn't you kill this dude?
He's literally me, for real.
Yeah, give me one reason why you would beat this guy in the back of the head.
It was, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. It was lacking subtlety.
Yeah, the dialogue there, like
I would
he should have been more human. Like he was just like, that's why I was joking that he was justified, because he was just such a douche. Like literally, he would not shut the fuck up. I understand it's through Hansen's perspective, but even so, like. It made Hansen look relatable in a way I don't think he should have looked.
It should have been a bit more of a sin to have a revenant come back and steal your son. So
yeah, David continues his streak of being literally me
why
to red flag characters on this podcast. I of course felt nothing. Actually, this man was not literally me. He does not have the Spenglerian Geist. Or no, sorry, the Spencerian. The Spencerian
he was too one-itis for you.
Yes. Yes, he got Longhouse. This is a story. This is a haunted Longhouse story. Yeah. I agree with y'all that it's paint by the numbers. It's pure. It's a love letter to pulp. Miles loves his pulp. I'm comparing this. I know I shouldn't, but comparing it to his other writing, this was solid. I liked it. There was actually some stakes here, and compared to the other one, I thought it was a solid. Out of all the pastiche, this one was executed out of the pulp ones, because there's a schizophrenic identity with this. You got the pulp ones, Ruby Dagger, Water Bitch, the pulp ones.
Moist hose.
All the pulp ones, this is the best executed.
Got lots of moist hose in this book.
No, the moist muffin. Labia of the lake.
Damn it.
Imagine the smell of that. Good God.
The Coochie Canal.
Dead men for days.
The Pussy Pond.
It was that. Yeah, you're right though. This one was Miles wrote the cover story for Tales 1, which was Twin Candles, and this one's about a million times better than that one. I fucking hated that one. As anyone who has listened to our preview for Unreal Tales 2 also already knows, I fucking hated that story. So
you got filtered. You got filtered.
Slightly fucking filtered. It was just not good.
The opening was great, and the ending was the build up with the stick shift. There was
the beginning,
there.
middle, and end were bad, but we're
I'm
not reviewing that
the
book.
Buzzer again.
So,
buzz, buzz, buzz.
Yeah.
Cap. Another double cap feature. No, there's no more Gabe.
Pulp.
Gabe, you're retired for the night.
No more Gabe. Thank fucking God.
No, we can go with Stampede. I really liked Stampede of the Protestants. It's the second Greg story.
So, Stampede of the Protestants by Zulu, another lit self-published author, Alitspa, is a story about about Greg, a guy with no qualities. So Greg is just a schlub. And at one point, he discovers that in the laundry room of his apartment, which nice apartment to have a laundry room, there is a tiny door, and inside of that door is a convenience store. So this convenience store door has just appeared, unbeknownst to him, has no way of knowing when it occurred, but apparently recently. In his laundry room. He discovers soon that no one is there, It is closed. The hours were listed, and in the morning, in the morning when the hours are supposed to start, it was not open. So his neighbor shows up, or he goes to talk to his neighbor on the other side of the wall. He asks his neighbor if his neighbor also has a convenience store, and it turns out that his neighbor has he has a pizza place. Yeah, that's right. He has a little pizza parlor. So, as it turns out, everybody in every residential home, there's now a small business that is never open, and where the doors don't open, and it's in fact difficult to. The doors are in fact impervious. It's this massive mystery, and there's paranoia about employees walking into your home to try to open these businesses, but no one has since seen them. So CERN, high energy particle research organization in Europe, has released a statement saying that the doors are you can't get around them. Everything's impervious. The wall around them is impervious. They can't be approached from the other side, and they resist all destruction. So it just ends up being this like unknown mystery. So Greg goes from having like very few internal qualities to starting to have this like bizarre epiphany. He goes 0 to 100 almost immediately. And so he goes through this reverse enlightenment basically. He flips the circuit breaker in his laundry room, which causes the lights in the convenience store to come on finally. And so this triggers a reverse enlightenment. So he says he went back to delusions of reference. What if it were not himself which had gone crazy, but reality? The only way to be certain would be to challenge the universe's absurd belief that mysterious laundry room businesses could or should exist. How could he answer this challenge with one of his own? It needed to be sharp and sudden, like how you would prick one person's toe to see if they were faking unconsciousness. The store represented commerce, and now there was light, which is what had triggered this epiphany. Greg needed to find the opposite of commerce. The opposite of commerce that was brought to him by the light. Religion. Was he religious? He could have easily chosen a dozen different sects into which to throw his newfound desire of faith, but instead he reverted back to a childhood memory. His parents had never taken him to church, but they had talked about going with their parents. Baptist. He was a Baptist. Where was the dividing line? Commerce was unnatural but beneficial. Religion was natural but, according to the current mainstream opinion, harmful. He began to inventory his life, putting things into natural and unnatural categories. Soda, harmful. Unnatural, obviously, but he could never return to his job again. The apartment was also the result of commerce and therefore unnatural. He would have to leave. The store could have it. His car would be staying behind, and he didn't care enough to wonder if the few possessions he owned, the ones which held any sentimental value, could qualify as natural. In fact, he was beginning to realize that with a bit of mental effort, he could make anything and everything seem natural. And so he goes outside and he just begins walking, and then he begins running, and then he begins to disrobe because he finds his clothes unnatural. And people started, and he started yelling, "I'm Baptist," out as he's running naked down the middle of the street. And people start to follow him eventually. And so he has this whole crowd shouting Baptist over and over until one guy comes up, says Lutheran, which causes a power struggle. So it's let's see. Lutheran, spat the man angrily. Greg stopped walking. The crowd stopped alongside him. Greg did not know the difference between Lutheranism and baptism. In fact, he would have guessed that they were defined more by their similarities. It wasn't anything the young man said so much as his tone, which upset Greg and brought him to a halt. They'd had a good thing going here, and then this stranger had made a pointed effort to ruin it. No doubt a good Lutheran believed in keeping the peace, and yet this stranger had asserted his Lutheranism for no other visible purpose than to upset everyone for the purpose of attention. He was sacrificing the sacred tenets of Lutheranism for his own personal advancement. Hypocrisy! And yet, whispers were spreading through the crowd. Lutheran? Lutheran. Lutheran! At any moment now, they would all be saying it, and for all anyone could tell, Lutheranism was nothing more than a concerted attempt to enrage Baptists. The impulsive Baptist jogging pack was bound to descend into calculated Lutheran chaos. The crowd was eyeing Greg. There was no precedent for challenges. And so, seized by a sudden impulse and aware that his efforts could never meet any success, Greg simply shrugged and said, Lutheran. And that's the end.
It's a good ending. I like this.
I admit that I do not really get the transition between the between the laundry room small businesses and the the point of the religious jogging pack. I did find it very entertaining.
It was a wild image.
Yeah,
Make this
it was
into a
very
short
funny.
film. I would watch it in a minute, dude. You imagine?
With the ball slapping his thighs.
I love
as he
that ball.
runs.
Oh God! Oh, it sounds so painful.
It was so great. It was great.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was like the rejection of reason, and so he's like everyone's devolving into this sort of impassioned group. I don't know, not consciousness, but like more primitive mindset.
Well, I have two thoughts about this, and it's both. I like the Cap's quote was also about the cult of reference. So the quick and straight version is it's a joke on the Enlightenment. He becomes a reactionary, technically, objectively reactionary, right? Because like, what is the opposite of commerce?
Commerce.
All right, the money making. What's the commerce?
What's the opposite of cormorants?
What's the opposite of money making?
What's some sort of seabird? What's the opposite of that? Some kind of land crab?
That's something a dialogue that would fit right in here
That's
perfectly.
Sorry.
That's the notorious reference to our previous review, but basically he becomes reactionary. He's like, what's the opposite of money making? I know, nature. I'll be nature, right? Religion is the opposite of money making, right? So he's playing out the events, but that's a Catholic thing. Money making was a Protestant thing. That was the Catholic slander against the Protestants, that they end up being materialists and proto-atheists.
You mean the completely true thing?
Yes, it is the 100% the true thing. We are a proud Tradcath podcast.
The consequences of the Protestant Reformation have been disastrous for humanity.
Human race. For the human race, exactly. So it was very confused. But then it can wouldn't he be a Catholic? But then you double it back down, because the idea of Protestantism is that whatever you feel, like the God speaks to a man's own soul. Revelation is not belonging to the Pope or authority or structure, is to your own man's soul, right? He's a Baptist, right? I don't know much about my Baptist lore, but I'm pretty sure. Guess what their leader was? Lore. Yeah, it's lore. Right, whoever founded baptism was like, I feel it this way, therefore I'll go create my own sect. So it's a parody of the Reformation, right? It's both a parody of reaction and Reformation. So he's like, you know what? I can justify whatever the fuck I want as long as it's based on my feeling. He even says this. Wow, it's completely arbitrary how I feel. And and he's a pushover too, because the protagonist, he's bored. He's like he is intrigued and scared of the little micro store. Then he has a nightmare about it, and then he's interested about it, but then he gets bored again, and he realizes that the idea of the store behind his laundry room is much more interesting than the reality. and he kind of doesn't want it to end. He fantasizes about it. He kind of realizes, man, I kind of want this to go on forever, right? Because he feels like he just gets back into the hedonistic treadmill, basically. He gets used to it. He literally says this.
Yeah.
This protagonist is very similar to Zulu's previous character.
I was going to ask Cap about that. Are all Zulu protagonists this sort of like slightly hapless, introspective character? Because I had the exact same observation.
So I would say that it is less the case that. So in Savage Green, the protagonist is not. In Modem Waves, he is, and in Cephalopology, he is not.
Just curious if that was like a shtick.
Although the passive hapless character who things happen at, right? not even necessarily to, but is definitely featured in all of his stories. It's definitely in there, even if it's not necessarily the protagonist. But that character is used a lot by Zulu.
He does it very well. It's the narrator from Fight Club without Tyler Durden, basically.
Brutal.
No, I mean this in a good way. I mean he portrays it perfectly. He's an office drone. He's a wagey. He gets bored, and so I think that's the interpretation. But I feel like I'm being pranked. I think we're getting pranked because of this line. He talks the same kind of phrasing he does earlier. This is the line that kind of pseudo pisses me off, or I find cleverer. I'm not sure yet. This is the line. He took a moment to consider what a person who was suffering from delusions of reference might make of this situation. To such a person, nothing was without significance. The entire universe was either a reflection of or a suggestion to their subconscious. They would believe that the convenience store had materialized to make a statement about either convenience stores or laundry rooms. The solution, therefore, would not be found by uncovering more information about the convenience store, but rather in answering the universe's challenges with their own. Do you get the joke? Like, that's what he does. That's what he does. It's not about it's not about convenience stores. It's rather, I need to answer with my own answer. But rather in answering the universe's challenges with one of his own. He's mocking the reader. We're doing what Greg does.
You're right.
You're
right. You know what? I buy into your interpretation, and I adapt it as my own. And
it's canon now.
That is this first time for everything. In fact,
all right.
Basically, very good story. Meta can be interpreted at least two ways and argued on both sides.
Absolutely.
Solid, very polished. First class act, usual Zulu goodness. Zulu's very reliable.
All right. The next one, the penultimate story in this anthology, is Night Shift by Ogden Nesmer, the lit pig man.
He brings home the bacon.
So Night Shift is about, humorously enough, a convenience store employee who basically gets the shit beat out of him by some rowdy teenagers. And it's basically him talking about. So this guy's sort of stuck at this convenience store. His managers keep changing, getting promoted or moving away or what have you. But this guy is the one consistent feature of the convenience store. And every time a manager comes, they do one thing and alter this environment that he's trapped in. And he's sort of the consistent portion of it, like sort of living under this strata of managerial decisions. And at one point they realize that there's a basement and there's a mold-filled, disgusting, horrible, deep, dark place in the heart of the building. which is significant. One of the and he's constantly wondering what's going on down there, and he's constantly worried about the guy who beat the shit out of him coming back. And one of the managers has left him a gun. So he eventually gets kind of bored, goes downstairs, and decides to poke around the basement again. And he discovers a small door. Once I was in the basement, I found something new. It couldn't be new, but it had to be. A little steel hatch on the back wall. But because it wasn't a wall, it was a door. It couldn't be opened. I pushed it and the wood oozed saturation like a sponge. But it didn't open. We had no key for it. We had thousands of keys stashed in the drawers and cabinets, but they didn't belong to the door. I checked. I threw all my weight into the wall again and again and knocked down some mushrooms, which hit the ground with oily splats. The little bell over the door rang. They walked in, laughing. I heard them, but I was busy trying to open the new door, and I tried not to listen to them. I wanted to find the hinges, but there didn't seem to be any. I pawed around, feeling moisture and mold decorating every inch. But the hinges. They noticed my absence. "Ain't nobody here," I heard one say. I ran my fingers along the ground to try and find the crack under the door to pry it up, but there was nothing. Heard them laughing again and again, vicious, stuffing things into their pockets. Things were being broken. They were laughing. I grabbed the chain cutters and started hacking away at the soft, mushy wood. It sprayed me with each stab, black water thick with filth and bacteria. The water heater was whining and burping, and the commotion upstairs wound down. Someone said, "Hello?" I had the sharp end burrowed deep, wedged between the latch and the wood to try to pop it off. And as I pushed my weight and felt the wood creak, a hollow pop echoed down as if down the long hallway, reverberating off the walls into space. They were looking for me upstairs now. And when he stood in the doorway watching me, hungrily curious, I didn't need to turn to know it was him. He'd returned for me. He recognized me as I him. And when I turned the cutters to him, he sprayed too, wet on my face, and opened up to silence. And then suddenly I was freed. So I interpret this as the rot that undergirds this building as being emblematic of the internal life of this hapless cashier. And the resentment and the trappedness of him having to, essentially he had to hack his way out. And so either the actual guy who beat the shit out of him or some random person that he has interpreted as being the same guy has died. And it is eventually released.
There's this theme of confinement. He even when he's working, he's behind like a glass shield, plastic shield thing, and then his escape is to slide deeper into this tight little tube of a basement space. It's really had a constricting feeling to it all the way through, which I liked.
Dare I say, urban decay?
The city is an animal.
Yeah, I mean this is pretty burger punk. Yeah,
this is pure burger punk. And what Ogden does so well is that he loves the vagueness, but unlike, let's say, Saccharin, which I do love, when you put into work to actually uncover this, you are rewarded much more. A depth, there's a richness to it. It's like a layered cheesecake. You got the whipped cream, you got the cookies and cream, you got the mousse. This is it. The pressure literally builds up with the water heater whining, and he's just trying to open the door. He's trying to open it. He's covered in sludge, in bacteria, dirtiness. He's filth. He's the embodiment of filth. And it's only through letting out his rage, right? Because he's been in paranoid, right? He's an absolute urban paranoia about this one guy beating his ass. And so he finally releases. He lets the steam out, basically. And suddenly I was freed. And that's all you need to know. right? He knows when to end a story
Well,
perfectly. Almost every time.
And
he knows
this
how to end
is
it perfectly.
this is a tight 5 pages.
Yeah.
Like this is not long by any stretch of the imagination. And the amount that is like
Perfectly polished.
crammed into that is there's no fat on these bones.
Very respectful of the reader's time.
Completely shredded. A completely shredded story.
I want to see how freaking jacked and sweet you can get, bro. Said progress pics.
Yeah.
Ogden.
This dude's got this story's got some vascularity. It's like, oh man, the back of the story looks like a fucking
thin,
Look at this.
solid, tight.
Yeah,
This is the lit bro version of physiognomy. This is
it's like
prose.
Ronnie
figuring it out.
Coleman's neck.
Rip. Rip Big Ronnie.
Big
all
Ronnie.
right. Good.
Perfect. Literally, it is a perfect story, basically.
It's a great one.
Next, Mouths by Louis Lapine.
Mouths.
Also known as Mouths. Also known as,
you mean
to me,
title?
it'll always be title. Mouths is a story of Francisco Santos, an epistolary story told between email exchange between himself.
True epistolary.
Yeah, true epistolary.
Yeah.
Neo epistolary.
It being emails does not make it.
Epistolary. Epistolary.
Ah.
And Fernanda Santos, his sister, who is in, I don't know if it's said directly, is in Mexico or South America, somewhere. He's an illegal immigrant to America, living some urban environment. He's in he got an apartment when it starts up. He's sort of just getting settled, getting a job as a busboy, trying to, get enough money to send home. Bold move, Cotton, in these parts to to have an illegal immigrant protagonist, but I thought he was extremely relatable, really well characterized right from the start. You've met this guy. The story unfolds that he's in this crummy apartment. He realizes that in the basement where the laundry machines are, there's this sort of one strange hole he finds at first with some teeth. And then slowly more holes appear and things start to fall into them and be absorbed. The scene I want to read is this one really good one where he meets a girl, they start dating, things keep getting better and better even as this whole issue gets worse. Eventually he calls, I think it's a super or landlord or something, Mr. Silva.
Landlord, yeah.
He's the landlord, he's the owner. Okay. So Mr. Silva, he takes him down to show him the pivot when things really go into free fall. Here's the hole. So Mr. Silva took out a cheap lighter from his pocket and lit it up next to one of the smaller mouths in the wall. Its teeth began to quiver and the thing hissed at us in response, as if it were in pain. We were startled for a bit, and Mr. Silva handed me the keys to his truck and told me to bring back a red gallon of gas that he keeps in the back. I was only gone for about a minute or so, and that was long enough for things to go wrong. When I came back to the laundry room, I found him lying on his side, still holding onto the lighter. His head just fucking gone, Nanda. I don't mean bitten off, just gone. As if he never had one to begin with. There was no blood. Smooth skin covered his neck where the wound should have been. So that's sort of the frank way it's described, again, in the form of an email to his sister. And it's terrifying the way it's just so quickly the way it happens. And then he basically has to handle it. He has to dispose of the body. And we discover later, basically these mouths lead into this sort of otherworld dimension or something. And and so the next sequence of events, he starts feeding the mouths. He starts getting more and more desperate. He has to steal from his workplace, gets fired for stealing food from the restaurant he works in to feed these creatures. His TV vanishes. He plans to move in with this girl he's dating. Then she gets eaten by them. He turns his back for a minute. I'm laughing, but it's told in a pretty, disturbing way. And then his hand vanishes. And then it ends with him lighting the building on fire.
Yeah, he burns. He burns
and
everything.
then there's an email to his sister Oh,
Well, don't forget the punchline.
The last one was an email to a sister from someone else. It was two bodies found in mysterious blaze. A news clipping of basically, I guess, his body and possibly the girlfriend's body was found after the whole building had burned down in this fire. He started as sort of an end it all final excuse. And then, then the punchline, Gabe, if this is what you're thinking, was he mailed them. He put one of the holes back when it was this novelty he first discovered. He shipped it.
No, he didn't ship the hole. No, he
Yeah, he didn't grab the hole and put it in.
He wanted to ship a doll for his niece, and so he shipped this doll, but it took forever to get there. It took like a really long time for the post to get it to her, and apparently a hole had hitched a ride on the stuffed animal or on the stuffed animal and had eaten it in the box.
So it was an accident. Okay, I interpreted it. I must have misunderstood. I thought it was on purpose because he was intrigued in the hole at first when he was at the same time he wrote the letter about sending them a package. But okay, so it was just an accident. But anyway, the hole escaped is the punchline.
Correct. Yep. The holes still exist. He sacrificed himself, and some holes still exist.
And
well, it's a Lovecraftian story.
Super
basically.
otherworldly, super. It has a great build up too.
Well, and he looks inside the hole and sees like a vast
network,
like a vast entity. Yeah, like he sees Azathoth basically, and
it's a big stomach basically.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like it's very on theme, right? Very on theme for the collection. Like, it's definitely a weird tale. It's a modern weird tale. I like that. The protagonist isn't an illegal immigrant because of my heckin' representation of Reno, but because it constrains his ability to make choices because of his fear of deportation. Like, some of his actions are taken in the context of that, which makes him less able to like address the situation and causes it to get out of control. So
it fills in the plot hole. It fills because this is basically a found footage film. It's a script for a found footage film. I mean this in a good way. It's a good found footage film. You can easily see the Blumhouse, like a $1 million budget, very tight. It was single location. It would be an excellent script. Yes. Honorably, Louise Lapin. You deserve funding for this, Louise Lapin. Because, the dialogue is kind of clunky. He's like, oh, hello, my sister. I'm so poor. You know, but you can kind of get away with that because it's like it's ironically. Hey, Holmes, I'm so poor.
I am so poor.
Right,
I am so glad that this Croatian woman wants my penis. I speak English not that good.
It's cheeky.
How many oranges you gotta sell to get out of that hole that he's in?
Dude.
A lot. Oh my god.
How much chicken feed do you have to throw into it before you... But the dialogue is naturally clunky. You can kind of see what Sakurai was trying to do with old translation shit. You can kind of see it here. It is clunky. He's like, oh dear sister, I want to talk to you. Like, everything is going well. I'm working with a Chinese guy. It's great. Oh shit, there's these holes.
Them holes.
And the build-up is great. It escalates, right? And him saying, oh, like it on the boundary of believability. Like, why the fuck do you just not leave? He's like, oh, I need the money, na. Like, it's just because he's paranoid about being deported. So it's just, he thinks about his sister. It's just believable enough. Like, it doesn't break your immersion. You know, and he also adds a mind wipe ability to the holes. Like, it kind of pseudo possesses him. So it's also kind of Deus Ex Machina. The mind wipe helps him basically just get over it. Yeah, it ate my hand.
Yeah, he's sort of losing his mind. And he's not sleeping too. So
Right.
he's at the end because he's like so paranoid about it. He's not sleeping well. For me, this was probably one of my favorites. Definitely in my top 3, I think, for this collection. Just I found the voice very believable in terms of the letters, and just really well told.
And notice he does get a kind of a happy ending. He does.
What about the head, though? That's my question. Was there a random skull?
They're together in death.
Well, that head's been long digested.
Okay. It has to be fresh for it to pop out.
Because
long gone.
No, because
Same with the hand.
remember he was like he could feel his hand getting digested,
Which is really fucked up when you think about the guy with the head in there.
That fucking blows.
Like, imagine that hell.
Well, that the head was probably still fairly conscious.
He must have been just like screaming into the void as his body is sitting on a couch back at his house.
Yeah.
No, he's probably like choking on stomach like acid. He's getting waterboarded by stomach acid.
You know, to be fair, he probably did just throw the rest of the body in the hole. So maybe it was, maybe it got reconnected. So then he was still screaming. Mr. Silva did not deserve that. He was renting a windowless basement apartment to an illegal, like the real American way.
Yeah, I don't think anything else on it though. No, it was straight to the point. It was just really well executed. How dare you?
I do have a critique of it.
Yeah.
I personally do have a critique of this. It's with the ending. All right, I felt the ending punch of because we think about it from the little girl's perspective. She opens a box. The sister comes in. Oh my God! The girl's screaming. She's crying in the corner. She looks inside the package. It's a mouth, aka a hole. And when I first read this, I was like, oh my God, the girl's mouth is inside there, right? I thought because she opened the box, the girl's actually fine.
I got it.
I
got it. I guess I was confused about
just throw away the
if
box.
he intended to send it or not, but I got that it was the mouth, like the mouth, if that was your confusion.
Yeah, it's the mouth from the hole. It's the whole mouth. I thought the little girl's mouth would be taken.
Why would her mouth be taken?
And
it would...
She opened the box. Her head's hovering. Open the box. She opens the box.
That's weird.
Yeah,
that's weird. That doesn't make any sense.
It's one of the punch. What? It's a punchline. It's a punchline to the title that actually works within the narrative, because you just throw away the box. It's part of a box. There's no threat to the end.
No,
actually,
you still have to destroy it, or else the whole thing will happen again.
She has to burn down herself, her
just the
sister,
box.
the entire house with her.
You got to burn the box. Well, yeah. If he had here's the moral of the story, man. If you find something new and unexplainable, burn it immediately. Whatever you haven't seen, whatever you're slightly unfamiliar with, light it on fire. Because otherwise, it could turn into a huge problem.
Moral. Right. Stranger danger, both objects.
It's stranger danger, but objects.
Yeah,
it's also object. True. Yeah, it's true of any new and unexplainable thing. Fear of the unknown is perfectly justifiable. Yeah, anyone you've never met before, they could be a mouth. You don't know.
Lord knows my ex was a mouth.
Ooh,
you've never dated anyone.
Wait till you get married, Gabe. Once you're married,
first and last.
There's a lot
address.
less mouth once you get married. Trust me.
Hey, her name is Serana. I met her in a cave. I did not get along with her father.
That's from the Skyrim expansion Dawnguard, and you can't even romance Serana. Thank you. So not only
I played it with mods. Thank you very much.
Did you name a video game waifu? You named one that didn't even have romance options as your girlfriend. You got turned down by the fictional character.
Listen, Todd bless. I played it with mods. All right, I even got the pregnancy mod.
Works.
All right,
all right.
Works.
And on that note, I think let's call it there. That's the end of our stories. Any I guess final thoughts on the collection as a whole? We've been through the whole haul of it, boys. What's last thoughts on it? As
a mouth, I would say this is definitely better than Tales 1 as a collection. If it would be significantly better if Saccharin had not been included, the average would have gone way up.
Disagree.
And Gabe is wrong about stuff constantly, but especially in this case. But you know what? You, dear listener, do not have to take our word for it because this is free. It costs free fitty. You can still buy a physical version on Amazon and join the physical Chad revolution here, and do that if you enjoy reading it. But you can try before you buy because it is free on their Sub.
Yeah,
they do it for free. How about you guys, Gabe?
For me, it's basically like a fucking not a jigsaw. What's a seesaw? A seesaw. The highs. This is the best stories and the absolute worst stories. With Tales 1, it was actually very evenly balanced. You know, yet one good story, one meh, two good ones, meh. It was very patterned. It had like a rhythm to it. Here, other than the Skylish story at the beginning, which is the actual real first story, I refuse to acknowledge the water one, was excellent. Slog through stuff that's mediocre and something that's, meh, it's solid. And then right in the second half, it is so backloaded. So this is a seesaw experience. Really, 6 stories here are worth your time. And half of them are truly amazing and excellent. And the other herd are just really, really solid.
I think it is completely delusional to say that Water Nymph is worse than Saccharin. That is completely delusional.
Saccharin is unique. It's unique, damn it.
Unique is not. I'm gonna keep going back to my fart analogy, my fart happy birthday song. But I do agree with your point about the seesaw nature of this one, Gabe. Tales 1, yeah, it was more consistent. But yeah, this. I think I would just recommend doing it free. Maybe just read it in reverse order. Maybe that would be the best way to enjoy it. And then feel free to skip the middle. If you read like 3 paragraphs and you don't like it, just skip it. And then you'll find quite a lot of good stuff. Because like I said, there's like really, it's like a third I would say is not very good. And the rest is either like quite solid to really, really good. All right. There you have it. All right, let's go there. Yeah, check it out, download it, read it, shit on them, and then review it on Amazon. Publicly name and shame everyone.
Yeah, dox everyone who offended you. Show up at their house. Demand your time back for however long you spent reading the story, and obviously driving there.
That was the only logical choice.
Send cum tributes to the ones you liked, and send scat tributes to the ones you hated.
Got one with your name on it, McNaughton.
God damn it!
And with that,
gonna play you happy birthday.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. It's a trap, except it's a magical wand instead of a penis. The sex wasn't that good. The sex scene, like where he says he's only a little bit excited as he crawls on her with a knife. Of course, obviously, he should be much more viscerally excited at that. You know what I mean? It's like, my God, I fantasize about this. You think it's torture, right?